Welcome into Hoopsville, everybody. Thank you for tuning in on this lovely Thursday evening. I hope you're having a good evening. I am your host, Dave McHugh, broadcasting from the WBCA NABC studios. Of course, Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. Lots to cover tonight, so thank you for tuning in. Once again, I want to thank our partners, WBCA and NABC. Got a lovely shirt from the NABC. You'll see a few of these throughout the season. And from the WBCA, you saw the WBCA mug last week. We broke that out. You will see more of that throughout our time, and we hope you don't mind. They are helping us out. We want to give them some credit where credit is due. If you have questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville@D3Hoops.com. Join us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Hoopsville. We're also on Instagram at D3Hoopsville there as well, though we don't monitor that during the show. But again, you can also email us, Hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. So a lot to talk about. We are not going to waste much time. We're going to get to it. Top 25 didn't fare so well. Quick mentions of that on the opening night of things. Some of the top 25 teams in the country lost. Number 4, St. Norbert lost to UW-Eau Claire by a single point. St. Thomas lost to UW River Falls by 9, 74-65. Alma had a battle with Ohio Northern, but escaped. Number 15, Emory lost to Covenant, 74-70. Some other schools seemed to do pretty well, seemed to at least get a win, but Wash U barely got past Webster by a single point. Susquehanna lost to Misericordia, 120-116 in double OT. On the women's side, a little bit more status quo. Nothing that really jumped out at me, and I'm scanning again to make sure that I didn't forget something. Though Hope had to get past Wheaton in double overtime. Of course, that was a top 25 battle between number 13 Hope and number 21 Wheaton, so you kind of expected that. Otherwise, everybody else kind of escaped, as it were. Well, except for Muhlenberg. Moravian beat Muhlenberg 58-50. I did forget about that game. And so on and so forth. But we want to move on quickly. We'll get back to scores and ramifications at the end of the show. The thing that dropped on Tuesday, the 15th, that was so big was the NCAA report on Thomas More women's basketball. The end result, a vacated season, all 33 games, a vacated national championship. First time in Division III men's or women's basketball that a championship has been vacated. All because Sydney Moss, though not named in this, but pretty well described in this report, though not named, decided or was encouraged to stay by an assistant coach at his home with his family post-surgery in 2014. You remember she blew out her ACL in 2014. I won't go into the details because we'll talk about the details in a minute. The end result was a failure to oversight. Basically, Thomas More didn't think anything of it because the assistant coach had a previous relationship. We'll talk more about that. The end result was she was deemed to be ineligible. She stayed in this assistant coach's, who, by the way, wasn't an assistant coach at the beginning of the season, the following season. We'll talk more about that. Anyway, she's moved out of that home at the end of 2014 and was living on her own, but still deemed ineligible all the way through the rest of the season. As a result, the championship is gone. For those of you curious, no, it does not get handed to anybody else. A team like George Fox does not get to take a loss off their record, the only loss they had that season. But Thomas More is now 0-0 for that season. What does that all mean? We have a lot to talk about tonight. We will talk momentarily with Adam Turr, who will give us his take on things. We will then talk in the first exclusive one-on-one interview that he's given with Coach Jeff Hans about all of this. We did reach out to Sydney Moss. She politely and respectfully declined at this time. We will maybe talk to her later. She is waiting for some other things to settle before she wants to speak out publicly, which I can respect. But again, we have a lot more on this, and then I will share my thoughts at the end of the show. In the meantime, this report, I believe, was shorter than the report for Baruch. I'll talk about why I think that's important later. But in the meantime, let's go to a chat I had with Adam Turr earlier, or really we had it yesterday. Adam is a contributor and editor for D3Hoops.com, along with a writer for around the nation for D3Football.com. He's also a writer for Cincinnati Enquirer, basically covering Thomas More athletics. And Adam joined me to talk about this situation. 3, 2, 1. Adam Turin now joins me via Skype. Appreciate you taking it. Actually, let me do that again because it makes no sense to the viewer. 3, 2, 1. Adam Turin now joins me to talk about the fallout over Thomas More and the women's basketball decision. Adam, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave.
Let's start, I guess, with what probably a lot of people are asking. What happened?
Well, this whole thing began around February of 2015, as far as the NCAA is concerned. There was an anonymous tip to the NCAA about Sydney Moss and Thomas More. That's what got the ball rolling on the investigation. To find out what actually happened, then we have to go back to 2014. As you all remember, Moss's first year with the Saints, she was a sophomore, transferred from the University of Florida, Boone County High School graduate from here in northern Kentucky, close to Thomas More, wanted to transfer closer to home. Her coach at Florida and the NCAA would not permit her to go wherever she wanted, so she couldn't go to the University of Kentucky. She couldn't go to Louisville. She couldn't go to Xavier. Couldn't go to Ohio State. Couldn't go to a D1 program, despite obviously having the talent. She was, all freshman team in the SEC at Florida. So based on her limited options that were given to her by the NCAA, she decided to come home to Thomas More. She wanted to be closer to her family. Her grandfather, who she's very close to, was not doing well at the time. So she enrolled at Thomas More. Around that time, when a big-time player from Division I with all that talent in the world, missed basketball in the state of Kentucky in high school, goes to a Division III program, that raises a lot of eyeballs and gets a lot of focus on her and the program that otherwise wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
So it started then, and people started to question and poke around, and in talking to Thomas More administrators and coaches over the years, they were aware of that, and they were really on high alert. And with her whole recruiting process and the transfer process, they made sure that everything was above board, that they did everything the right way, because they knew that they would have some elevated attention with a name like Sydney Moss coming to their campus. And already a very good Division III program in Thomas More that had a long streak of conference championships and playoff success already. So it started there when she decided to transfer back home to Thomas More. From there, we remember her first year. The Saints were rolling. They get to the quarterfinals up at Whitworth and in Walla Walla, Washington. Fast break, she blows her knee out.
Yeah.
The Saints lose and their season's over, but they still got 2 more years of Sydney Moss. Things are going to be okay. She goes back to campus. She's rehabbing after knee surgery. Her family lives in West Virginia, so she doesn't have family here. She's living in an apartment. Thomas More doesn't have a lot of on-campus housing for students. It's predominantly a commuter school. So she's living in an apartment. There's stairs to negotiate, and it's not the best situation for, a young person. I think she was 19 years old at the time, 19 or 20, it's hard enough to recover from knee surgery when you have a support system around you. The season's over, so she doesn't have her basketball teammates around her. So she's got this rehab process. And that takes us to the next step, which is, one of Thomas More's assistant coaches that 2013-14 season was Jerry Allen. Coach Allen, had a relationship with Moss and her family that goes back to her junior high and high school days. He's been a coach in the Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati area for a long time. He had a relationship with Sydney's grandfather. He had coached against her in AAU. He coached her in AAU. She was close to him and his wife and his child, a family friend. She felt like, the Allen family was like a second family here in Northern Kentucky for her. So, when she's having some difficulties in the rehabilitation process after the knee surgery and, living in an apartment, having to go up the stairs, the Allens invited her to stay with them. And she did. And, that's what eventually ultimately led to the violation.
Yeah.
But
got the ball
there's
rolling.
a lot more to it. Yeah, there's a lot more to it than that. Yeah. And, so basically the penalty here was because she lived with, a former assistant coach. The NCAA found that it was, an institution member, from the college,
right,
who was providing her with a free benefit, an impermissible benefit of, rent-free living. She wasn't paying rent to stay at the Allen's house. what really brought the hammer down on Thomas More was the fact that the NCAA found that the coaching staff, the administration, didn't really check the rule book as closely as they could have and should have. The coaching staff became aware of the situation. They knew Sydney was staying with, at this point, former assistant coach Jerry Allen. He was only a volunteer coach, part-time. He didn't coach in the 2014-15 season, didn't coach last season. So, the coaches and administrators were aware of Sydney's living arrangements for an 8-month period. I guess from February, or I guess it was from a little after her injury in February through December of 2014. No, I guess it was close. It was about 8 months, maybe April to December. I have to go back and reread the report again. But basically, they knew what was going on. They didn't bother to ask. They didn't call, the conference or check with their compliance officer or check with the NCAA. And the NCAA frowns upon that.
Yes,
they want to make sure that every institution is fully educated on everything and is fully aware of the rules. And, it's something that, at the Division III level, it's easy to overlook all the scrutiny that needs to go into situations like this. Division III athletes don't have scholarships. They have to, find their own living arrangements. And in this case, staying with an assistant coach is an impermissible benefit because he is considered an employee of the institution, and he's not allowed to give her any benefits, including free lodging, free meals. He let her use his car for a couple weekends. Those were the impermissible benefits. What happened? So the NCAA found out from an anonymous tip in February of 2015. So this is Moss's junior season. The Saints are again rolling on their way to their first national championship. So what happened was Thomas More didn't find out about the anonymous tip and the investigation until June. Their position is they were alerted right after the NCAA found out. They would have held Moss out of the postseason while the investigation was being conducted. And then they wouldn't have had to forfeit these games. What happened was by the time they found out, it was too late. And under the NCAA's guidelines, she had played an entire season as an ineligible student athlete.
Well, let me ask
based on her receipt of impermissible benefits.
Well, let me ask you that, though, because that's where I get a little bit confused. And I've read through the report, and maybe I've just missed it. I've read through too many reports in the last year, to be honest with you. But the fact that she was ruled ineligible after she no longer was staying with the coach is where I've gotten a little confused on this. Maybe you have a better idea here. The 8 months draws us to about November, December. So I'll give the fact that maybe she was ineligible per the eyes of the NCAA in the first semester. But how is she then ruled ineligible for the second semester if she at that point, from what I can tell in the report, is back to living on her own, paying her own rent and such? What am I missing that makes her ineligible in that second semester and thus ineligible for the NCAA tournament, and they have to vacate all those games and a national title?
That's an excellent question, Dave. That is a question for the NCAA, and if you ask the NCAA, they will tell you to look at the report.
Yeah, right. And
I've read the report 3 times now, I think, and still can't figure that out. Basically,
so I'm not the only one. That makes you feel better.
She was ineligible for the entire season because of what had happened prior to that season. I guess that's my understanding of it, is based on receiving the benefits from, early 2014 until the late fall of 2014. That rendered her ineligible for the upcoming season, is the best that I can gather from the report.
And that very well may be, and there may be people who, and we should point out, we're taping this with Adam prior to Hoopsville airing, so between the time Adam and I are talking and hitting the air, we may know this answer already, or maybe someone's listening now and can answer this for me. But that's where I'm definitely a little bit confused as you and I speak, of going, wait, but she was back into a house. And don't get me wrong, Adam, there's clearly mistakes that took place in this. I just find, I'm not trying to give Thomas More an out here. Again, mistakes were taking place. I just find some of this punishment pretty extreme.
Well, it's just understanding the timing of the situation is a little difficult. And like you said, and Thomas Moore's biggest issue is they said, hey, when you got this tip, why didn't you tell us?
Exactly.
We would have investigated, much like we saw last season, Sydney's senior season in November of 2015. They held her out of the first 5 games due to an investigation.
Right. The 4 months between the tip and alerting the college, in my opinion, I hate to use the word malpractice, but it's not exactly kosher in my mind that you wait that long to tell a school that you've got an issue or you've been told of an issue.
And I think that's Thomas Moore's that's their position as well, because they feel like those wins in the postseason of the 2014-15 season, in 2015 shouldn't have been vacated because they didn't know anything was going on.
Yeah.
As soon as they found out there was a potential issue with her eligibility, they held her out.
Yeah.
And that didn't occur until the beginning of the 2015-16 season.
And if they lose the NCAA tournament because in the tournament, don't get a title because she's not in the lineup, so be it. It happens.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's not this scenario, right? So let's move up a little. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. I was just say rereading. It appears that the NCAA deemed her ineligible for the 2014-15 season, and because when teams travel, she receives. She gets to travel with the team. She gets to eat with the team. All of those benefits that happened that season, even though they didn't know she was ineligible at the time, because she received those benefits with the team throughout the duration of the season, that's what the NCAA is using to justify vacating the entire season.
And I get that. I'm trying to figure out how they rule her ineligible for the whole season if she's doing everything right as of January. But again, it's a little minutia here and we'll figure it out. And again, I'm just trying to understand it. I'm not trying to give anybody an out here whatsoever. Let's talk about, though, the fallout a little bit here and the ramifications. They talked about how they brought the team together, and obviously the team knew an investigation was taking place, but they brought the team together before that that information hit our email inboxes and told them the news as to what was going to happen, and clearly they're emotional about it. But from your vantage point, from who you have talked to, whether it be on or off the record, what's been the reaction from those close to this right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, you had Coach Jeff Hands on your Hoopsville program the night before.
Yeah, clueless.
I went back and listened to it again before we spoke tonight just to see if I could gather any hints. When you ask him a certain question, if he had any pauses or hesitated to answer.
Yep.
He seemed normal as can be.
I agree with you.
I'm sure he knew there was an investigation pending. I don't know if the NCAA alerts the institution ahead of time. I don't think they do before the announcement is made. So he may not have known the full report when he was speaking to you. But at the same time, that was the eve of their season opener. He's got a team right now to prepare. They have to defend a title. They're still the reigning champions of Division III women's basketball. And they've got to defend a title, and he's got a group of young ladies he's got to prepare to get ready. And, it was tough for them. Watching the press conference here on yesterday at Thomas More, he seemed to be taking it harder than anybody. It seemed to be he was on the verge of tears just answering, how are you going to get this team ready to play tonight? They had their opener at center that night. It was tough for him. It was real tough because, the Thomas More program is a really close-knit program. I think that's contributed to their success over the last decade plus. Is there a really tight-knit program even before he was the head coach there, and obviously since he's become the head coach there. But these young ladies, especially the ones who were on that team that graduated, that 15 season was their last game. I spoke to a couple of them, and they're handling it pretty well. They're obviously upset. They feel that the NCAA wronged them, but at the end of the day, they still went up to Grand Rapids and the confetti was still falling down on them. They were still doing confetti angels at the end of that game against George Fox.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to take those memories away. Sidney Moss still has 2 championship rings. I don't think the NCAA can come take them away since the NCAA doesn't give rings to Division III teams.
The schools pay for those.
The school has to pay for them itself. So, no one's going to take away the memories and the moments, and in their hearts and minds, they're still champions.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing that some people might overlook. Maybe some outsiders say, oh, Sidney Moss was ineligible. Thomas More cheated. Well, let's look at the facts here. Sidney Moss played a full season before this happened.
And she was,
she played as a sophomore in 2013 and 14. They won, I think, 31 games that year.
Yep.
She was eligible that season.
Yeah.
If she doesn't hurt her knee and blow out her knee and have to have surgery, none of this ever happens.
Well, and she wasn't going anywhere.
And none of this contributed from a competitive standpoint. Staying with Coach Allen's family while she recuperated from her knee surgery had nothing to do with the basketball team that Thomas More tried out on the court in the 2014-15 season. Okay. So I think that helps comfort the players a little bit, knowing that, the results on the court, they might not show up in the NCAA record book anymore. They might not show up in d3hoops.com anymore, but they know that they went out there with a team and, went head to head and won all 33 of those contests. And, it's NCAA, it's bureaucracy, it's legislation. It's, do you enforce the same rules on Division I athletes as you do on Division III athletes? The good thing that can come of this, spinning it forward a little bit, is this opens up a conversation. President David Armstrong was, he's very adamant that he feels his institution, they admitted they made some mistakes. They didn't consult with the NCAA. They could have looked into this a little bit more to make sure that the living arrangement was appropriate or inappropriate. And they made mistakes. They didn't inform their coaching staff as well as they should have. There was a gap of education. They admit that. They feel it was a secondary violation because it was not for any competitive benefit, and because the NCAA is holding a Division III program where the student athletes, use that term however you wish, don't get any compensation, any benefits, any scholarships for playing the sport.
Right.
So, it's opened up a conversation, and I think Armstrong is just the guy to take it forward. He's a lawyer. He's a
former coach.
A college president. He's a former coach. He's been in athletic administration before.
Yep.
And he is determined now, to roll this forward and really have a dialogue with the NCAA and see how can we make things fair for Division III student athletes if you're going to hold them to the same standards and regulations as some Division I and II athletes who receive more benefits, because there are hardships for Division III student athletes. I've lived it. I know
I'm
what
with you.
Just like,
and
you know it very well as well. I mean, it's I don't know, but let's just hope that this isn't the end of it. That somehow something good can come out of this.
Yeah, I agree with you. We'll actually be hearing from Jeff Hans here coming up in a moment. We'll ask him if he knew on Sunday. I have a suspicion that usually the school kind of gets a little bit of a heads up, but maybe they don't know the exact heads up. So we'll find out from Jeff if he knew more than
I think they find out when the announcement's coming, but they don't find out what the announcement is.
Very likely. But we'll find out shortly if he knew more than he let on Sunday night here on Hoopsville. Certainly, I went back and listened to the same interview to see if I could pick up on anything and racked my brain to see if he hesitated about any Moss questions or anything, and he didn't. Let me ask you this, and I don't want to necessarily say that this is happening, but is Jeff Hans, let's be honest, it came to his table. He's presented with the fact that she's at the assistant coach's office. He's the first one who decides, okay, let's argue second one, because the assistant coach certainly could be the first one. Decides, I don't need to take this anywhere else. I don't need to check with compliance. I don't need to check with my AD. I don't even have to check with my president. I don't have to check with anybody. I think this is okay. We're good there. And you're right. That's where the hammer really came down. It came down on the fact that, okay, so she stayed the assistant coach, but once you found out, you did nothing about it. Yep. Is he in trouble? Is he gonna? I mean, he didn't get a show of cause from the NCAA, which is a decent sign that they don't completely go after him, and they don't have a postseason ban. And the president talked about how at one point there was an unethical charge sitting over their head that got dropped. Is Coach Hans in any kind of trouble here? At least from the school's point of view, could his job be in jeopardy for what has happened, or has the school fully embraced him and understood it was just a mistake?
From speaking to everyone that I've been able to speak to so far in the program, it appears he has their full support going forward. Okay. Obviously he coached in that win over Center. He was hit by the NCAA with the dreaded failure to monitor the program,
and he's got to go to some extra meetings.
His coaching staff, which it's a major violation. By the rule book, this is a major violation for failure to monitor. He, as the head coach, should know what his assistant coaches are doing, and he should make sure that everything they're doing is in compliance with the NCAA.
True.
And like you said, that was the biggest reason I think why the violations were so major and not secondary, was because 3 staff members, including Coach Hans, were aware of the living situation for Sydney, and didn't ask anybody, and I think that's the thing. It's so simple. And the NCAA wants everyone to follow the letter of the law and wants everyone, if you have a question, ask the NCAA. And, every school has their own compliance director, and they have access to the conference's compliance director, and they have access to the Division III compliance director.
Right.
And the fact that Thomas More didn't just simply reach out and ask the question, say, hey, one of our players blew her knee out. Her family lives out of state. She doesn't have anywhere to stay. Is it all right if she crashes with one of our former assistant coaches for a few months? If they had just done that, then I think this becomes a secondary violation. Yeah. And, well, first of all, it doesn't last for 8 months because the NCAA will say, you know what, that's not okay. That's a major problem. So you need to stop that right now and send her limping back to her apartment right away.
Yeah, and they would have gotten they would have gotten a slap on the wrist in comparison.
Exactly. And
I don't think they would have they certainly wouldn't have vacated any games because they wouldn't have gotten that far. You're absolutely right. There's a lot there that good point.
And the other point is that raised my eyebrows that I've been struggling to grasp is the fact that the word elite appears 3 times before student athlete in the NCAA's report.
I was going to ask you about that. That seems borderline. Well, no, that is questionable.
It seems like that should be irrelevant. If this is an NCAA rule and it's enforced across all divisions, across all programs, if this was the 12th woman on Thomas More's bench staying with a former assistant coach, the penalty should be just as severe as if it's 3-time National Player of the Year Sydney Moss. And I cannot for the life of me figure out why the NCAA would even bother in its report to mention that she's an elite student athlete, talks about her history, how she was heavily recruited from the time she was in junior high school. That should all be irrelevant, shouldn't it? I don't understand the relevance of that to this case. And that, if I'm Thomas More, and again, speaking to some people off the record at Thomas More, who are both there currently and there previously, they feel that this was, a bit of a, people were out to get them and get Sydney. And because they felt it was an unfair advantage, that Sydney Moss played for Thomas More. And that's just not the case.
Let me ask you this.
Moss was born, in a different state, in a different city, wanted to move closer to home. She may have played for that local Division III program in a different state.
You're right. Almost like a witch hunt in some sense.
That's the phrase I have been told and was avoiding using, so I'm glad you said it. Because
I
have heard that from people, and I'm not going to name any names.
No, that's fine. But I can say it.
Hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I can certainly say it.
And you know what? The NCAA investigation and the report opens itself up to that.
Sure. Oh, don't get me wrong. It sounded like Thomas More didn't step in it here. They made mistakes, and I think the investigation is justified. It's the outcome. It's the wording in the report. And as you point out, if it's the 12th man or the top man, it doesn't matter. It's still a violation. I agree with you. I think it's a little much. And
it's
again,
in the first paragraph. It's
you're
the very
absolutely
first
right.
paragraph, the introduction says elite student. The student was an elite member of the national championship women's basketball team.
Yeah.
This could have been a 1-19 team with a player on the bench, and that's how the NCAA should enforce its rules if it wants to be taken seriously, in my opinion.
In this case, I was an elite member of my soccer team while I rode the bench. So if we're going to go down that road. But I agree with you. It just feels weird. And this comes on the heels of the Baruch case, which I know you don't have a lot about. I'll have more on my thoughts about that down the road, where I thought Baruch, in comparison, has certainly gotten off lightly. And
we talked about, off the air, that it's the difference between violating NCAA rules for a competitive advantage or just a coincidental student-athlete hardship. I think there wasn't any intent on the part of Thomas More to cheat anybody. She was like you said, she was already there. She spent a whole year on campus. It wasn't like they recruited her by offering her free room and board at her AAU coach's house right off the bat. And
staying there didn't keep her there. She was already staying there. It didn't entice her to make a different decision. She was going nowhere despite everybody's best hopes. She wasn't going to Kentucky to play because she still would have had to sit out a year.
Because the NCAA and her coach at Florida wouldn't let her.
Well, right. But even if they had let her, and now she had sat the year, gone to Division III and technically gone a year past that point, she still has to sit a year if you go back up a division. Duncan Robinson at Michigan had to do that when he left Williams. So, the year still exists that she's going to have to sit. So she wasn't going anywhere. And people, but that elite thing, it bugs me a little bit as well. And let me point something out just before we go any further away from it. You talk about NCAA, and I've said NCAA a few times about this is their report. This is written by Division III members. This is written by an AD of a Division III school. This is written by her committee that are Division III people. This is not the headquarters of the NCAA writing this. So we got to remember, this is D3 writing about D3.
That's a great point. Because they understand the life of a Division III student athlete.
Exactly.
And they understand the life of a Division III program.
Mm-hmm.
And, yes.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And it's interesting. You and I could talk forever on this, and I realize it could be interesting for us, but maybe not always for the viewers. So we'll wrap it up at that point. Again, we have Jeff Hans coming up on the show, and we'll get more insight from him. But before I let you go, any final thoughts that you've gathered from this fallout from the school, or even personally, that you think that needs to be said before we let you go?
No, later this week, I'll be looking forward to talking to some of the former players and getting their opinions. So there will be a story that I should be putting out sometime the next few days, just getting their thoughts and their feelings about it, letting them vent a little bit as well. And, I'm sure they'll reiterate a lot of things we talked about how they feel like, the NCAA can take away wins in a record book, but can't take away the memories and the moments that those girls shared together.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, this Saints team already had a chip on its shoulder this year. Back-to-back defending champions, but they're not picked to repeat. They're coming to the season ranked fourth. They've got a chip on their shoulder already, because a lot of people around the nation probably think that Sydney carried them to the tournament and to the championships. But as you mentioned in your conversation with Jeff, in the last episode,
right?
This was a good program before Sydney got there, and there's no reason to think it won't be a good program after that. They've got, 3 of their top 4 players from last year's team back in Abby Owings, Madison Temple, and Nikki Kiernan. And I'll tell you what, knowing Abby Owings, she's good enough as it is. You piss her off like this, she is going to be. I can't wait to see what she does this season.
She was darn good in the championship.
This team has a lot of talent still on it, and they have all the motivation they need and then some. Yeah. People keep picking against them. People are probably, let's be honest, there are probably people around Division III basketball that are happy to see this happen to them.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to take that as motivation and fuel. And I would expect them to once again be in a position to make another run for another national title to shut everybody up.
Interesting enough, back at Grand Rapids. If they get that far, they'll return to Calvin. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Well, Adam, thanks so much for your time.
And you know what? They could win. They could win their first official championship at Calvin College.
That's true.
I think that is a great coincidence that they can say, you know what, NCAA, you took one away. We'll just go back to Calvin and have that same confetti fall from the same rafters again. Yeah. That would be quite a story.
That would be. Well, thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave.
So that's Adam Turer, who joined us on the show, a pre-taped interview about this incredible story, really, in Division III. Vacated title in basketball. Hasn't happened in either gender. Dropped on us on Tuesday with Thomas More. So what does this all mean? Where does this all go? Let's quickly recap. Again, vacating all of 2014 and 15. So instead of 33-0, they're 0-0. Instead of a national title, what would have been their first? They no longer have that. So last year's title in Indianapolis is now considered their first. Where did this kind of all go sideways? Where did this maybe get confusing? Who knows? The one thing I do know is joining us now to talk about it is the head coach of the Saints, and Jeff Hans joins us. And Coach, welcome to Hoopsville, sir.
Hey, Dave.
You and I talked on Sunday.
Yep.
Did you have any idea what was coming in 2 days?
No. Nope. I don't even remember what time I talked to you Sunday, 8:30?
Yeah, something like that.
Found out about 9:30 Monday morning that everything was coming out on Tuesday.
Okay. What was your? Obviously, you find out early from the NCAA, and you guys talked about it in the press conference, talking to the team about a half hour before the press hit, or the presser was released to the press, or hit my email at noon. What was your initial reaction when you got word from the NCAA as to what this all meant?
I mean, we kind of were expecting the worst, and losing the 2014-15 season and vacating all the wins and the national championship was the worst. I mean, so it was just, it's frustrating, because it falls on me as the head coach, and then it's my fault because basically I didn't ask a couple questions, and I take full responsibility for letting a bunch of young ladies that play here now, played here in 2014-15, especially two seniors, and Stephanie Cruisling and Sydney Wainscott, that had won that national championship their senior year. I let them down, along with a lot of our alumni, all of our alumni, and the Thomas More College community.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you talked with them? I assume you have. You probably have to explain what has happened so they didn't catch this one through us, let's say, for lack of a better description. What was their reaction to this?
Oh, they're frustrated. I mean, they knew the investigation was going on, and they had no idea because we're not allowed to speak about it, of where we were at. And so shock on Tuesday, and frustration and disappointment that they were losing something that they'd worked hard for.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the report, if you don't mind, some of the details that I've read through it numerous times. I've read through, as I said with Adam, too many at this point. So a couple questions per the report, and then extrapolate from there. First of all, the institution, I assume you clearly disagreed with the failure to monitor the assistant coach. That was a major violation. Why did you guys feel that was actually just a secondary violation? And would it have made a difference in this case?
I don't know if it would have made a difference to answer that part of it. And the major part of it is because it was one-time instance. I mean, and that's what I tried. In our attorney, we tried to tell the NCAA it was just a one-time, one instance compared to the rest of. I don't remember how many colleges, unfortunately, have that in Division III, that major violation, but it's very few. And a lot of those involve multiple years and multiple athletes. Sure,
versus the one scenario is the argument. Is the length of time maybe the problem here? Is it that the assistant coach said, hey, I told him something in April or maybe it was June, I think the report said, you don't remember the conversation, though you don't dispute it, but then you remember something in August, and then really nothing kind of happened until December. Is the length of time maybe the big sticking point with this?
I assume with the NCAA, I don't have any idea what their thinking on that part of it is, but I would assume so. And the fact I didn't ask, I went with I assume previous relationship that I know that people assume that part of it, that's out there, and that's what I went with, and that's why I didn't ask the questions like I needed to, in hindsight like I should have, and I'm very sorry for all that.
The report constantly talks about the assumptions that things were fine, as you kind of talked about that there were. I should say that this situation was fine, that you assumed that this situation was fine, that it was in the rules. They cite your AD at one point maybe having the same assumption, along with the compliance person, who I don't remember who it is, but that's okay. Is that assumption something that's common in Division III? Where is this, or as they called it, folklore, that this relationship kind of trumps that being a problem, come from? Where was that kind of resonating from?
I mean, probably the folklore is the best way to put it. I mean, that that there's pre-existing relationship. I mean, that people use that and they talk about that. It's and there is a bylaw out there that has that, and 4 things that you have to meet, and the NCAA, I don't know if we didn't meet them, I guess. even though in the report it says that there is a existing relationship between the assistant coach and the student athlete.
Is it
so? Is
there confusion over whether that even is allowed? Period. That maybe that doesn't exist. I did remember reading in the report that basically you guys were asked to cite it. No one could prove it. I think that a case was at the very end pointed to, but it was a bit of a different case. Is it one of those things that maybe all of Division III thinks this exists? Maybe a lot of people in the NCAA think this exists. In reality, it doesn't exist. This rule doesn't exist.
Yeah, I can't answer for everybody else.
Sure.
And I'm not going to assume. Believe me, anymore. I'm not assuming anything.
Yeah.
So I don't want to talk for everybody else. I did at that time, and I will not in the future.
The report indicates the case started with an anonymous tip in February of 2015, which would have been during the season, obviously, kind of wrapping up the regular season. That further info from that anonymous tipper was then revealed in June of 2015, and from what I can tell, you guys were not informed until either that point in June 2015 or as late as August 2015. There's some confusion, honestly, in the report as to when you found out. Did the infractions committee or anybody from the NCAA or anybody who's involved with the case indicate to you guys why it took them at least 4, if not 6 months to let you know that they had a problem or they had an investigation brewing?
We did not know until August of 2015 when we got a phone call. And nobody has said anything, and so we would have taken action in February.
Mm-hmm.
I know that because when we did get the call in August, we took action immediately from our administration and President Armstrong and Terry Connor to start an internal investigation.
But in your back and forth in this investigation with the NCAA, I assume you guys asked questions in court. And listening to your president, it certainly sounded like he voiced some thoughts to the NCAA about all this. Did you guys ask why did this take so long?
I don't think. Honestly, I don't think we did. President Armstrong may have at one point in time with one of his calls, but I don't know that for sure.
This question might be more for the committee, to be honest. Adam and I touched on it. The word elite is used at least 3 times in the 16-page report. They certainly go into description of who Sydney Moss is without naming her once. You'd have to not know a lot about basketball to not realize who they're talking about. They also go into a lot of detail into her past history, her recruiting going into Division I, a lot of things that just seemed irrelevant. I got a sense from people I have talked to that has rubbed people wrong, at least on the Thomas More campus. Is that the case? Do people feel that maybe this case was a little bit drummed up more than it really was? Maybe that the writing in the case was a little bit too aggressive, maybe?
First of all, they're not. NCAA is not going to name the student. They're not going to put their name in it. That's
You're
their
right,
policy.
but that is about the best description of a student athlete I've ever seen, who's not named. I can go to a couple other reports and not figure out who they are. This one, it's not. I mean, granted, we knew, but it's not hidden very well.
Correct. I don't know. You'd have to ask them why they used it, and I don't know how people feel. Because again, it does. Like when I looked at it, it does kind of it tells you, what was going on.
Yeah.
But you'd have to ask the committee on infractions why it's the lead in there that many times.
And I should point out to the audience, we are trying to find out a way to maybe talk further with them. There was a conference call for the media, but we get very little time to pour over the release while trying to deal with the news before that takes place. So sometimes we don't get all our questions. I'm trying to find a way to maybe talk more about that. Another thing that I find interesting, and this is where I'm confused, maybe you can help me a little bit of this now that you've gone through it. They ruled her ineligible for the entire season. She stopped staying with the coach at the end of December, so I can see the argument that she wasn't eligible for November and December. But she's now on her own. She's her own student. She's paying for her own things, et cetera, from January on. Why did they rule her ineligible for the entire thing? And depending on what you say, I may have a follow-up.
She ruled ineligible basically because I didn't ask questions, didn't bring anything to the attention of my administrators like I need to, and then we did not ask the NCAA. So once she moved into his house, she became an ineligible athlete because she was receiving extra benefits. So she was ineligible all the way through until Sydney went through the reinstatement process November of 2015, at the beginning of last season, 2015-16.
Yeah, those were the first 5 games that she missed going through that process to become eligible. So in other words, she's ineligible. She has to go through that. But because you guys didn't know she was ineligible in the first place, there's a little bit of a revisionist history going on that she's ineligible in hindsight.
Correct.
So you're punished for the whole season, even though she technically was, let's call it legal, call it eligible by the law, January onward. But because she was already ineligible, she hadn't done anything to become eligible again. It kind of gets a little muddy that way.
Yeah, we didn't do. I didn't do my part of what I needed to as the head coach of the program.
Let me ask you about the assistant coach, Coach Allen. Obviously, a friend of Sydney Moss. I believe the report said back to 6th or 7th grade when she was introduced while practicing against his AAU team. It's a very complicated thing. We won't go into it. At least the report gave us all that information just for the fun of it. He came to you and said, "Listen, I will resign if need be," and granted, this is the conversation you claim you don't remember, but don't dispute. I'm not trying to say anything there. I just want to remind people. I will resign if necessary. You said he didn't have to, but here's my question. He somehow disappeared off the staff at some point in time, and we think he disappeared ahead of that season, the 14-15 season. Is that correct? He was not on your staff for 14-15, right?
No, he was on staff 14-15.
He was. Okay. I stand corrected. I know he went off staff 15-16.
Yes, yeah, he was at a high school last season.
Did he leave your staff because of this case?
No, nothing to do with the case.
So he left before you were alerted that there was a case?
Yes.
Yeah, because obviously that timing is going to look suspicious to those outside of it.
Correct.
He's with the program, and then he's not with the program, and you don't replace that position either.
No.
And the report says you don't replace the position, I should point out, too.
Yes.
But it's not related.
No, it's not related at all. He was part-time assistant coach, and he needed to be with his family, and he was able to get a high school assistant coaching job.
Okay.
That would hopefully help him in his future years of coaching, because he wasn't going to do college, and he wanted to get into that program and at the high school level and help them out to start his way with that part of it.
Another part of this that's it's kind of interesting is Adam talked about it in the previous segment. You guys, when she became available, whenever that timing is, whenever you realized there was a chance she may come to Thomas More, it starts with her talking to a couple former classmates high school classmates who are on the team. When you become aware that she's coming, you basically tell the assistant coach and others, hands off, we don't want to screw this up. And then ever since then, once she joins the program, everything I've gathered, especially what Adam has said, is you guys were on the up and up. You knew you could become a target for anybody who's a little miffed that Sydney Moss is on your program, a D1, a good D1 player has transferred to D3. Everyone's going to look for a problem. Even if it doesn't exist, they're going to look. So you guys are being diligent, you're being smart, you're being ahead of things. So how did this happen? How did this one slip through?
Like I said, David, I'll go back to answer the first part. With their existing relationship they had, I wanted Sydney to come to Thomas More because she wanted to,
right.
not because a family friend was here as an assistant coach, a part-time assistant coach.
Sure.
So I handled the recruitment of Sydney Moss with that part of it and allowed her to make her decision. And then when she got here and played 13-14, and then we lost in the sectional final round, and she injured her knee. The slipping of the crack was, again, the existing relationship that they had that I assumed would be correct, and that's a mistake that I live with for our players and our alums, and I made that mistake.
Obviously, you weren't the only one. As it moved up the chain, it happened there as well, as the report clearly states. What's the fallout been in the last few days? And outside of vacating games, outside of national championships, I mean, what's been the fallout or the emotions or what has been the reaction of those who've talked with you?
A lot of frustration, especially the players. I'm assuming you're talking about the team members.
Anybody.
From 14, 15.
Yeah, anybody.
Team members are just they're confused. So trying to explain as much as I can to them of what is going on and why and let them try to get them to understand and they shouldn't understand at this point in time because they're frustrated with me. So trying to build that trust back up with those guys and a lot of support from the college, from the campus, and just trying to make things right as much as we possibly can, as I possibly can, to continue to move forward.
In the history of Division III, Rowan football and even Wesley football have trouble getting away from infractions of their past. Keene women's basketball, as you probably remember in 2012, is still tainted and probably will be for a long time for what a former basketball coach did there, and that was certainly egregious. Baruch just went through this, and I suspect people will look sideways at Baruch for a long time to come. We'll get recent. Mass Boston men's soccer has a video going viral that will probably taint the program in the department for a long time to come. And we can certainly point at other things. How worried are you that this case will hurt the program not only in the near term and obviously the past by taking a title away, but will hurt the program and maybe even yourself for years to come?
Very concerned about that part of it, and because of the perception out there that it was intentionally done to keep Sydney here, which is not the case. In reality, it was a young lady that had very little support and no support here in Northern Kentucky that coming off an injury that needed help because her family was not local anymore. Her mom moved back with her grandmother down in West Virginia, so needing support and the small circle of people that she has. Coach Allen was the biggest male mentor, father type figure that she had, and they offered her to come stay. So I mean, again, looking out for a young lady and a player with an injury trying to rehab. I know I know now what I know, and I will make sure that we don't make that mistake. I don't make that mistake in the future.
Are the Division III rules any part of this a problem? For example, in Division III, you really can't. You can have access to the students, and you can certainly talk to them. You can't train them necessarily, but it certainly lightens the amount of time that they may visit with you, and may just become one of those things where I don't need to touch in with coach. I'm just going to class. It's no big deal. Obviously, Division I has a lot more hands-on with their student athletes. Was that part and parcel maybe with you not being fully aware of what was going on for so long?
Yeah. I mean, because again, we have 19 weeks that we can really interact with them. October 15th to the end of the season, 19 weeks of the season. Besides an academic meeting, and an end of the year meeting after the season's over. So not being able to talk to Sid, and we would talk a little bit about the rehab and make sure she's going to rehab and that type of stuff at that point in time.
The other thing is this is kind of a Division I rule. It's certainly understandable what the rule is. I get it. You don't want any benefits for student athletes, but it's mainly built in for the Division I side. I kind of sense from your president, who's a former coach and a former athletics guy, former lawyer too, that there's a little bit of a anger that this isn't really a rule that should exist in Division III as it's written. Maybe tweaked, Is there that sense from you and anybody else out there that maybe this is a misappropriated rule for Division III?
Which rule? I'm sorry.
The rule in the sense of Sydney being able to stay with someone for the benefit of her, not the benefit of the program, and not the benefit, for her health. That this rule may be just a little bit too far for Division III's world.
Well, if there's no relationship, like if Sydney come to my house, yes, that would be a major issue, because I had no relationship with Sydney except for basketball.
Yeah.
And it was in high school. They said good game, because she was going to go to Florida, or she was going to go to Division I. I was here at Thomas More that senior year, so she was already signed. But with their relationship being as long as it was since she was a seventh grade or right before seventh grade year, I don't know. It's now. Again, I will ask every question and find out rulings, and then ask more, and bug the crap out of our compliance director.
Yeah, it looks like you guys also are going to have monthly meetings or weekly emails.
Oh yeah.
A number of other things. You're going to be making sure you know where student athletes are living at every given moment. You're going to ask what vehicle they're driving at any given moment, because part of it was borrowing his vehicle as well. Well, Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time. This is far more than I expected to chat with you, and I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. I don't want to take any more of your time. I'm sure we'll revisit this as time goes on. You know that we always give the guest the final word, and I feel it's probably appropriate now just to see what your final thoughts on this might be.
It's a mistake that I made, and I'm very sorry to disappoint a lot of people. And our program will try to work to move forward, and it's something that we're going to have to work hard. I'm going to have to work hard to do.
Well, thank you for taking the time. Appreciate you doing that, especially after being on the show on Sunday evening as well. Good luck the rest of the season. Obviously, I know you guys have a little bit of a different mission now, as it were. It'll be interesting to watch how the Saints react to all this and how you guys plug through the rest of the season. Appreciate you taking the time, and we'll look forward to talking to you down the road.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Jeff Hans, once again, head coach for the Thomas More Saints women's basketball team, who had to vacate the 2014-15 season, including the national championship won at Calvin College. They do go back to Calvin College with the championship weekend this year. We'll see if Thomas More tries to maybe earn that championship back. Forgot to ask him, but I'll try and find out if they have to actually return the actual trophy. I would suspect they do. But for you out there wondering if they have to return the rings, the schools pay for those. I'm pretty sure they're not going to ask the teams for the rings back. We just went an hour nonstop. I appreciate you taking the time to join us for that hour. We should have taken a break in there, but we didn't. But we have lots ahead still. We will come back to this topic. I'll give you my 2 cents on it at the end of the evening. But in the meantime, we have other coaches to talk about. We'll talk to Claremont-Mudd-Scripps coach Kristen Dowling, number 24 team, out to face off against WashU in Chicago this weekend. We'll also talk to Trine women's basketball coach about his team, Ryan Gould. He's got a pretty good squad under his belt, and they're going to vie for the MIAA title, I highly suspect. We'll talk to him coming up. Pat Coleman talked to SUNY-Canton's men's basketball coach, Ben Thompson, about the Kangaroos in northern New York, and we'll also talk to Case Western Reserve's head coach, Todd McGinnis, formerly of Hartwick. That's all coming up in the next hour plus of this show. We got about 90 minutes, I suspect, left. We're going to go overtime because of all this. You are listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. Kristen Dowling of the Athenas will be up next. More Hoopsville after this.
I used to never really talk. Ever. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. It helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at d3hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
We are calling you, all of you. We are calling all Division III schools to join our cause.
It's on us to start the change. It's on us to be the change. It's on us. It's on Division III. It's on all of us to stop sexual assault.
Three, two, one. Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you are enjoying your Thursday evening if you're listening to us live. If not, hope you're enjoying your day. You are listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. If you have questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoops or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, Hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Hoopsville. Of course, we're on Instagram as well, though we don't monitor that during the show. But you can certainly find out our guests, what we got coming up on the show via Instagram as well. Quickly, again, thank you to Adam Turr and Thomas More head coach Jeff Hans for joining us here to talk about the Thomas More story. There will be plenty more to talk about that, I'm sure. Coming up, I'll have my final thoughts on it, but we're going to move on to some other segments for this show that we had previously scheduled before the fallout with the Saints. So let's do that. Again, if you have questions for us, tweet us, message us on Facebook, etc. In women's basketball, we'll stick with that topic. One of the teams that has been kind of up and coming, but maybe falling under a lot of people's radar, has been Claremont-Mudd-Scripps. We featured them a few times on this show. They are now nationally ranked in the preseason poll, and they are not shying away from competition. They are heading out this weekend for a monster start to their actual Division III schedule. They're 1-0 after a win against non-Division III La Sierra. So joining us on the Hoopsville hotline, on her way, this is pre-taped, on her way to St. Louis, Missouri, is Coach Kristen Dowling of the CMS team. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
Hey, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on. Always love being on.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. We'll let everybody know you are literally about to board a plane to get to St. Louis, and we've carved out some time to talk to you, so I appreciate you taking that time. You will be playing Chicago and WashU this weekend. I think that's officially jumping in with both feet this season.
Yeah, we want to play great competition, and we're really excited to be invited to the McWilliams Classic. It's going to be a great opportunity for us to see some great competition as we gear up for conference.
Obviously got off and running with a win over La Sierra, 77-48, kind of a, let's call it a tune-up game, as it were. Did you learn anything from game one, or is it at least get the rust off the team a little bit after practicing for 4 weeks before the big games this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, we had played an exhibition prior to that as well, so we've actually been able to get 2 games in. And it's been really good for us. It's shown us a lot of things that we need to work on. The exhibition, we weren't as successful as we were against La Sierra, so we were able to clean up some things against La Sierra and really work on some things that will help us as we kind of go throughout the season, and especially this weekend.
The team has gotten a little bit of recognition in the preseason as we get ready for this. Obviously, a top 25 nod from the D3Hoops.com poll at number 24. You also had a few All-SCIAC honorees and players who are coming back from last year's honors as well. A little bit more attention, I would say, on the Athenas than you're probably used to at this point in the season.
Yeah, definitely feel that, but at the same time, it's very early, and that preseason recognition is while it's incredibly humbling, it's really more of a nod to our alums. In past CMS teams, we're obviously very excited where we're at and very excited with where we're going. But that preseason stuff doesn't mean much in our opinion. We got a lot of work to do, and we're just excited to compete every day and get better. And this trip to WashU and St. Louis will be a great step in the right direction.
We'll talk about those games in a little bit, but interesting enough, you do bring back one heck of a core of this group. All-SCIAC honorees, Jai Dunga, I hope I said her name correctly, Chris Brackman, and then obviously the Athlete of the Year in Kaylee Severt, who's a junior. I mean, you have a great core of this team coming back, and if we read your press releases a little bit carefully, you also seem to be pretty proud of the freshman class that's come into this group.
Yeah, we're really excited. We have 13 returners back from last year's team that advanced to the second round of the NCAA tournament. Of those 13 returners, 10 of them are upperclassmen, led by Kaylee Sievert, who was an All-American. And then, we're also led by 6 seniors, and these 6 seniors have been here for 4 years, and they're actually the winningest class in CMS history and SCIAC history. So really excited about the group that we have, and also we have a very talented group of freshmen. So just very excited about the incredible mix of talent and experience that we have leading our team.
And maybe this senior class hasn't had the experience, but have they sensed, and I know it's really early, but has there been a sense of maybe a little bit of more pressure because there are higher expectations? Yes, you're top 24, number 24 in the top 25, that's one thing. But this class does bring back a lot after a tremendous year last year, after going 23-6 and making the second round. Have they shown signs that they know that expectations are high?
I mean, we don't really talk about expectations. We really focus just, Dave, on just being the best we can every day. And really, that's what we want from our group, is we want to have reach our potential and do the best we can every day. So we don't really talk much about expectations or pressure other than, we know it's there, but at the same time, we just want to get better every day and compete. And if we do our best, and regardless of what that result is, we're satisfied with that. So we, like I said, just love our group and are really excited about where we're going. But we're definitely not going to let expectations or pressure hinder us or slow us down or make us feel uncomfortable. We just want to be the best we can be. Talking
to Kristen Dowling, head coach of the Athenas of Claremont-Mudd-Scripps, again, number 24 in the D3Hoops.com preseason poll, and we'll talk about their trips in St. Louis, or games in St. Louis momentarily. But let's quickly go back to last year. Made the NCAA tournament. Not unfamiliar with travel. You headed out to Texas Tyler. You took on a pretty good, talented, though slightly injured Trinity, Texas team in the first round, run by 6, and then Texas Tyler, unfortunately, unceremoniously showed you guys the exit door. But what do you take from that experience? What can you use this season from that experience moving forward?
Yeah, that was a great experience for our young women. Like we said, we've got 13 returners back from that group, just to kind of see what it's like to win a game in the tournament, and then to see a really good Texas Tyler team. They're currently top 5 in the country, and they deserve every bit of that. And to play them on their home court and to be that close to kind of a Sweet 16 run and see what that looks like. So the experience is great for our young women, and it will definitely, if we're fortunate to make it back to the NCAA tournament, it will definitely give them a sense of what's coming. They know what's coming. So we're very grateful for that experience we had last year.
So you're on the road. You're going to take on an unranked Chicago team, though that doesn't make them any less difficult to play. And you'll take on another top 10 team in number 9, Wash U, of course, on Wash U's home court. What's a realistic expectation this weekend?
Yeah, Chicago and Wash U obviously will be both very good.
Yeah.
They're very good teams. They're very well coached. They both return a lot of players from a very strong UAA conference. Honestly, the expectation for us is just to compete and get better. We want to do the absolute best we can. If that results in a win, we'll be beyond thrilled, or a couple wins, we'll be beyond thrilled. But we just want to do the best we can and compete. And this is a great tune-up. Again, everything for us is just building up the conference. So this is a great tune-up for us as we get ready to prepare for a tough SCIAC and then hopefully an NCAA tournament berth.
You've got these 2 games. You got a game against Carleton that jumps out at me. Pomona Pitzer obviously is in conference, and Occidental. You got a couple of non-Division III games. Got a game against Bowdoin in there as well, which is certainly going to be a tough test. You're almost positioning yourself a little bit with some good competition that, say something accidental happens in the SCIAC, you could, if you have a good season, be in position for an at-large. Is that part of the mentality when you went into scheduling, was trying to position yourself for the what-if?
We want to play the best possible teams we can. So we are honored to be invited out to Wash U to play them. We got Bowdoin coming to our place. Bowdoin's another top 20 team. We'll also play Westmont, another national NAIA national championship contender. And just want to absolutely see the best teams we can and prepare. And they just make us better. We always say the better everyone else is, the better we have to be. So they're going to just make us better, and we're really excited about the opportunity to play some great teams.
Speaking of better, you have a new home. The Roberts Pavilion is finally done. You can play in your own place now versus kind of moving around a little bit or playing in some old locations. What's it mean to have your own home court, as it were, and a brand new spanking one?
Oh, Dave, it's amazing. I mean, Roberts Pavilion is one of the finest athletic facilities I've ever seen. It's unbelievable. You definitely need to come see it, but it's awesome. We are so blessed to play there. I mean, it's just literally, it's got to be one of the best Division III facilities in the country and compete on par with Division I facilities. It's just amazing. So it's awesome for us to finally have our own home and to be there, to compete there and practice and train, and definitely sets us up for success on the court and also with recruiting and all sorts of things. We're beyond excited to be there.
Actually showing a time lapse of the destruction of the Ducey Center and now the building of the pavilion, just because I love time lapses, so I have an excuse to run them. But yeah, I mean, that was the thing, is you guys kind of get a little bit disconjointed. You can probably relate to NYU, who will be disconjointed for probably 5 years as they rebuild their place. You get your locker back, you maybe get your office back, you get a little bit more comfort at home. But is there still a little bit of a feeling of we're not used to this place?
I mean, it's going to take us time to get used to it, absolutely. But we're just incredibly excited to be there. To be honest, our team has developed a little bit of resiliency the past few years as we've been on the road a lot. So for us, I mean, like our kids said, we didn't realize how much we didn't have until we were in this place, and we don't have to walk a mile up to the gym every day. And walk back down for training room stuff. So, I mean, we're just thrilled to be there, and, I mean, it is so exciting. So it'll be no problem for us to quickly get used to it.
Going to keep showing the time lapse because it's a lengthy one, but it's fun to watch, and I don't want to cut it off earlier, but let's jump to the conference schedule a little bit here. Obviously, you guys ran through the conference last year with just one loss, won the conference title game. I know the basics of everything is you got to go win the conference. You got to position yourself to win the conference. You'll get going with that in just a few weeks. What do you make of the conference, though, this year? Is it going to be something you could run through like you did last year, or is it going to be tougher this year?
No, I mean, I think from top to bottom, the SCIAC's definitely improved. I mean, Calou and Chapman and Redlands will be very strong, as always. They're actually playing some good teams as well in the preseason, really strong schedules with the Northwest Conference and Texas Tyler and other schools like that. So we expect great competition. There's also some new coaches in the conference. I mean, SCIAC has great coaches, so it will be a battle night in and night out, and we know that everybody's aiming for us, so we will have to bring our best every day.
And, of course, the West region also features, the teams in the Northwest. It's hard to sometimes separate yourselves. Obviously, the NCAA tournament sent you to Texas last year, or the NCAA committee, so that was a bit of a separation. But do you have to keep an eye on those teams? Do you have to make sure you're aware of what's going on with them?
I mean, we obviously follow what's going on in the Northwest Conference because they're just so talented and they're so good. But at the same time, we worry about us. So, I mean, to be honest, we spend most of our effort worrying just about us. But the Northwest Conference is always going to be incredibly strong, always going to have a national contender. And obviously we assume if we make it or whoever makes it out of the conference to the NCAA tournament will probably face a Northwest Conference team. So we definitely pay attention to that, but focus again on us.
So what's the secret? What's the secret in the sauce this year? What will we need to see on the floor to know how good you are going to be this season?
Yeah, we got to play defense. Man, we got to play defense, and we have to defend. I mean, when we defend, we're really good, and we limit people to one shot only. We're really good, and if we aren't going to defend, we don't have much of a chance. So our team's working really hard on defense, and we're just going to keep pounding at that and keep doing that. And because if we can stop teams, we'll be able to score. So that's kind of what we're focused on. I don't know if it's a secret, but that's what we're focused on.
Well, and that's good for us, especially on the East Coast, maybe when we're watching games online, to understand what we're looking at when we're watching the Athenas, certainly. And then the other thing, too, is how great would it be to maybe be in a position to host an NCAA tournament team in that new pavilion?
Oh, my gosh. We would love to host. We would love to host there. It would be unbelievable. That's really far away. We're just so one day at a time and so one game at a time. Right now we're just worried about getting on the plane. But that would be amazing.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're about to board that flight, so thank you for carving out some time with me today to join us on Hoopsville. Good luck against Chicago and WashU. I think I could probably come up with more difficult opening weekends, but this one would be up there near the top of the list. So I at least wish you luck. As always, as you probably remember, we always give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
Just, Dave, really appreciate the work that you do for D3 Hoops, for the men and women. I've been doing it for so long, and just really thank you for covering that and really appreciate everything you do. And we at CMS are just very excited about our team and everything going on in the athletic department and the pavilion and Roberts Pavilion. So appreciate you taking the time to reach out to us. Absolutely.
I'm actually going to break my rule. I forgot to ask you something before we got to that point, and that's my own mistake because I didn't write my notes down. Not that I want to dwell on it, but your reaction to the Thomas More story.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm bummed for them. You know, that's too bad. I feel for them, their kids, and their coaches. That's got to be really hard. I also just really feel bad for them, and for us, just want to keep our heads down and go to work and make sure we're doing everything we can the right way. But I feel really bad for their kids and their coaches, and I hope that there can be some sort of redeeming grace somehow, some way in this story.
I hear you. Well, thank you for the time. Thank you for the kind words as well. So have a safe flight. Good luck this weekend. I know I'll stay in touch, and we'll look forward to chatting with you somewhere down the road.
All right, great. Thanks, Dave. Take care.
Thank you. Kristen Dowling joining us here from the airport, about to take off as we tape this interview. Again, they'll take on unranked Chicago and number 9 WashU this weekend. Then they're at Pomona-Pitzer to take on Carrollton on the 25th, and UC Santa Cruz. Part of that, there's a tournament there. They'll actually go to UC Santa Cruz, and they're at Pomona-Pitzer. It's a little complicated, but it works pretty nicely. Non-Division III Westmont, followed by Occidental in conference, followed by non-Division III Biola, followed by Bowdoin, she mentioned, over the Christmas holiday. They'll also play, and then they'll get into conference play. Conference play on the 31st of December. We'll talk about that later in these shows in a couple weeks. But conference play on the 31st of December is crazy. But anyway, we'll end it there. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll just stick with some women's basketball, and we'll jump into the middle of the country and talk to another team who got their exhibition ways off to a good start. But they're in the conversation in the MIAA. I'm not talking Hope, and I'm not talking Calvin. We're talking Trine. Trine Women's Basketball joins me next. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. More with Trine and plenty more on the show when we come back.
This is our It's On Us pledge. It's on us to make a personal commitment to help keep all people safe from sexual assault, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, or ability.
Not to be bystanders to the problem, but to be leaders of the solution. We invite you to join us in this campaign by informing your campuses about the It's On Us mission.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Cheer for the stumbles, the he shoulda had that's, and the tears that linger. For in those moments, greatness lies. There, you will find the provoked, the determined, the unified. It's in those moments that champions are born.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying your Thursday evening, or if you're listening to us some other way, I hope you're enjoying your day, as we have said before. If you've got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Hoopsville. We will continue talking about the Thomas More story, as we did in the first chunk of the show, later on. But for now, we're continuing to talk about other topics that we had kind of lined up before the fallout began. And we're sticking with women's basketball. Just got done talking on the West Coast to Claremont-Mudd-Scripps. Let's say we took the proverbial flight with them across the country. We're just going a little further than St. Louis. We're now dropping ourselves into Indiana, Angola, Indiana, to be specific, talking to a women's team who, I don't know if they surprised the MIAA last year, but certainly made it well known they aren't going anywhere. And as a result, the coaches have chosen Trine to finish second this season in the conference, behind Hope, ahead of Calvin. It's kind of how it finished last year, as Trine fell in the championship game to Hope. Can Trine now take that next evolutionary step, especially now that the cat is out of the bag, as it were? Well, joining us on the Hoopsville hotline is their head coach, Ryan Gould, in his third season. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
Thanks, Dave. It's nice to be with you.
I appreciate you taking the time. Just to let everybody know, we are pre-taping this as the team is on their way, as we speak, to Wheaton, Illinois for their opening games of the weekend. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first and foremost, a lot to build on from last season, getting to the conference championship. For some teams, that can be a little daunting, and for some, very exciting, and for some, both. What's it like for you guys?
I would say it's definitely both. It was an exciting finish to the season last year. We won our last 8 games to get to that final against Hope. So it was a good experience for our girls. And, we returned all 5 of our starters and 9 kids who got significant minutes for us last year. So it's exciting, but, definitely at the same time, the expectations are higher, and, you start having that target on your back a little bit more. So we're going to have to figure out ways to respond to those type of things.
19-8 was the best ever as a Division III institution. Obviously, that you've been in Division III since 2004, or at least the program has. So obviously building. And the year before that, you guys had been 15-10, kind of coming out of the doldrums, as it were, being either a below 500 or 500 team. What's been the change?
Well, I think we've been able to bring in some quality players and some quality kids. The work ethic is off the charts with the girls that we have right now. We've been able to get a couple transfer kids in from, the Division I and Division II level that have certainly, added to the talent level on the roster. And, and they just now share that common goal of wanting to be successful. So, a lot of the credit goes to, the girls that we have on our roster right now.
You talk about that roster. 5 starters are all back. Ashley Elliott, Brandy Dawson, Taylor Coe, Cassidy Williams, and, of course, Haley Martin. You also bring back 3 other players that were significant in that playing rotation, Shelby Oldham, Montana Martin, and Shaylee Duff. That's a lot of experience coming back. And you then, on top of that, are bringing in transfers, as you mentioned, that are adding to that depth. How comfortable is it? And I know that's a little bit of a tough word to use, but how comfortable as a coach is it to knowing you have that much experience to start the season?
Well, it's definitely new territory for us as far as having a core group that has played together and kind of set the bar for what they want their program to look like. So it's definitely been an encouraging start, into the practice season, and just seeing the work ethic that the girls had this summer and coming back stronger and those type of things. So, as coaches, we definitely feel like the players and the team are definitely on the same page and pushing towards a successful season.
Talk about the 4 transfers this year. Of course, Haley Martin was a transfer from Division II Nova Southeastern. You have other members of this team who have transferred in, Brandy Dawson as well. You also have others on the bench who have transferred in, Kayla Freeman from a community college, et cetera. Quite a high percentage of transfers. What has been the reason for that? And I'll preface it by understanding that in Division III, transfers have become a little bit more of the norm for varying reasons. But what's been the reason for the transfer road, let's call it, at Trine?
Well, you have Haley and Brandy are both local kids. They're both within a half hour of our campus, from their high school days. And, the Division III model, with the academic focus and a little bit more balance within the school year, with their time and things like that, I think is very appealing kids who maybe start at that Division I or Division II level and find, this is my life right now. The kids that we have tend to be looking for a little bit more academic focus and a little bit more opportunity to be really involved in campus. So I think that's been part of it with those two. Then our junior college girls, where we're located here in Northeast Indiana, we're really close to Michigan, which is a very highly populated junior college state. So there's a lot of kids out there who are looking to continue their basketball careers, and the ones who are looking for that academic type of institution, we can be very appealing to those type of girls.
Talking to Ryan Gould, the head coach of the Trine women's basketball. Funny little note, one of his assistant coaches is basically one of his bosses as the assistant AD. We can get to that joke later. But, Coach, you talk about this experience now. You now do essentially have a target on your back, being picked second in the conference. Having come off of last year, you're no longer going to be a surprise to many. And you start the season by heading to Wheaton for the Beth Baker Classic. You'll take on Platteville. Obviously, Wheaton is on the other side of that bracket. I'm not sure who Wheaton is playing off the top of my head. How important is this weekend to get off on a good note?
Well, it's very important to establish your identity early. Work on your playing rotations and things like that. But you definitely want to come out with a win and then get into that game on Saturday and have an opportunity to get some experience of playing in a championship game type of a format. Being at a perennial top 20, top 25 type of team, with Wheaton College, it's definitely a tremendous opportunity for us to play against some teams that we don't normally see, but also have a chance to, get our name out there outside of this little corner of Indiana against Wisconsin and Illinois teams. So we're definitely really excited to get over there and see how ready we are to get the season started.
When you look at this schedule, you've got these two games, obviously. Then you'll come home and play Oberlin. And out-of-conference also includes Anderson and Heidelberg. You'll play 3 teams in the preseason top 25. Some of those other teams include Defiance, Franklin, and Hanover in out-of-conference. And obviously Hope is in conference, and they'll certainly be a challenge. Have you guys put a goal on the chalkboard or the grease board in the locker room? Have you put an expectation of what you want to do this season? And if you have, what is it?
Well, with the players that we have back and the way we finished our season, I think last year our hope was to make the conference tournament. That was as far as we thought. If we can get into that top 4, which has only been done once here at Trine since we joined the Division III ranks, that was going to be a success for us. This year, I think, we're aiming a little higher. We want to compete for a conference championship in the regular season. The expectation is to make the conference tournament. And, once you get there, you're two games away from the NCAA tournament. So we see ourselves as the potential, to achieve those type of goals. And, you got to get to the conference tournament to have an opportunity to make the big dance. So those are the kind of things we've talked about. We haven't set any goals as far as we want to win X amount of games or things like that, but it's trying to compete for a conference championship and get ourselves to the position where, you're 2 games from making the NCAA tournament.
You have 5 games in the first 12 days of your season, obviously starting on the 18th, not counting the 15th there. You have 6 games in the first 15, 7 in the first 19. So it's a good run here. It's a good set of. I mean, you're playing a lot of basketball between now and really the first time you get a break on December 18th. Is there a bit of pacing yourself you're going to have to be careful of as well?
Well, I think what we're going to have to do, and we've talked a lot about this, is we're going to have to trust our depth. We're going to have to play a lot of kids. We had our two preseason, a scrimmage and then an exhibition against Fort Wayne this past week. And, we're playing 11 or 12 kids as much as we can. So we're definitely going to have to trust those girls to come off the bench and compete and, play well for us to survive that many games. We're not going to be able to do that with 6 kids. So I think that that's something we've talked a lot about, and keeping everyone engaged in practice and making sure that they're battling as hard as they can to be prepared to come off the bench and give us quality minutes here during this month.
This conference has been the Hope Calvin show for a long time on the women's side. a little bit on the men's side too, but certainly a little bit more deep than the women's side has been. Both teams won more than 20 games last season. You kind of showed up in third place at the end of the regular season, a game ahead of Olivet in conference, but Olivet was 13-13. You guys with 19 wins kind of, entered the fray, as it were, and made this a 3-horse race. And with the coaches saying that they think you can finish second, and I know preseason polls are preseason polls, but especially coaches polls, but to finish second and be in this conversation and be part of the mix. What does that say for where the depth of this conference may be going in the future?
Well, as you said, to really get where you want to go in the MIAA, you have to go through Hope and you have to go through Calvin. And, whether we're picked 8th or 2nd or 3rd, wherever it may be, we know that those games are going to be extremely tough battles every single season. We were able to see a lot of the teams play Tuesday night. Adrian had a great win on the road at Marietta. Alma knocked off a good NAIA opponent on Tuesday. Albion got a good home win. So I think that the depth and balance in the conference, it's improving each year, as we've gotten a little better and things like that. And I think that more teams are willing to go head-to-head with the Hopes and Calvins. And, it's definitely something you have to accept that challenge. If you can compete with Hope, you can compete with anybody in the country. So, and that's kind of the mindset we have, is we're going to embrace that challenge. We're going to look forward to it and, give them everything we can.
Of course, the other side of that is you've had some coaching changes, and especially at Calvin, where Coach Ross stepped down, and now you have a really good coach in Winkleman stepping into the mix. Kind of makes it a little bit new. You don't really know what to make of Calvin. At the same time, Hope, while they're still the same, is always turning over talent and could always change things. What's the expectation for you as a team into the conference? Is this a conference you can win, or is this one of those, kind of like last year, hey, let's just stay in the fray?
I think we have the potential to compete for the championship this year. In saying that, since I've been around the league and kind of looked into things, if you want to win the conference, you're looking at having to go 15-1 or 16-0 to win the conference. That's what historically it's been. So, to say that, we're capable of doing that, I'm not sure I'm willing to go out on that limb quite yet. But I think that, on a week-to-week basis, if we play the way we're capable, then, I think we've got a chance to finish up at the top and make some noise. But at the same time, you see the teams, that didn't make the tournament last year off to really good starts this year and returning a lot of quality players. So it's definitely going to be a challenging season for everyone in the conference.
Can't believe I've gone this long before bringing up the exhibition game you guys played with Fort Wayne, probably because I'm not used to talking about them that much, but you did get a significant victory. Granted, an exhibition game, but it's not like that D1 team isn't going to take it just as seriously as you are as they prepare for their own season. How big of a step is that for you, even if the game doesn't count?
Well, it's something where we've played them the last 3 years, and a couple of years ago we weren't competitive at all. Last year we were fairly competitive into the third quarter. I think we ended up losing by 20 or so, and then this year, our girls had the mindset of, we're going to go over there, we're not going to back down, we're not going to quit. We end up outscoring them 29-16 in the fourth quarter, and stole a win there. I think we end up winning 80-71. So, the thing is, with us being about 45 minutes away from Fort Wayne, and having quite a few local girls, I think it meant a lot to our players to go up there and go down there, I should say, and make a good showing for ourselves. And one thing that a couple of them said that really stuck out to me is, we're Division III players because we choose to be. A lot of our girls have, a lot of options, Division I, Division II, NAIA options. We choose to be here, and I think it meant a lot to them to prove that there's a lot of high-quality basketball being played at our level. And I think that they took a lot of pride in that going into the game, and definitely a lot more pride in that, walking out of that gym with a win.
That's a great quote. We are Division III players because we choose to be. It's not necessarily a slight. It's because they just chose to be at a Division III school. And by the way, we should point out that Fort Wayne game counted for them. That little wrinkle in the exhibition rules, but it counted for Fort Wayne as a loss, who then went on to lose to Butler 2 nights later. Well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on the show. I'm certainly going to be fascinated to watch how the Thunder do between now and the rest of the season. Obviously, as you just get into the regular season coming up on Friday here. And again, we're taping this as you're en route as this airs. But thank you for taking the time. As always, we give the coach the final word. Any final actually, before I get to that, I made this mistake in the previous segment. Your thoughts and your reactions to the Thomas More case.
I don't know a lot about what happened. Honestly, it's just, you hate to see that for a lot of different reasons. It's something where a lot of hard work went into that season for that coaching staff and those players. And just from the little I know about it, I hate to see any type of controversy, show up on their radar and things like that. And, I've met their coach a couple times, and, I would expect them to, bounce back and move forward and put another great team out on the floor this year. And, that's about all I really know about the situation.
That's fine. Just wanted to get kind of dip your toe in the water and see what the temperature is type thing. So I appreciate that. Now I'll get to what I was asking you. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
Well, just looking forward to a great Division III season within our region. And then as we start paying attention a little more into what happens outside of our region, just looking forward to a great season of women's basketball. And we definitely, as a program, appreciate you taking the time to reach out to us, and we look forward to following what you guys put out there for the rest of the year.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it as well. Safe travels. Good luck this weekend. And again, we'll look forward to watching the Thunder the rest of the way.
Thanks, Dave.
Ryan Gould joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline. Again, team who was 19-9 last year, 10-6 in the conference, who finished second in the conference championship, falling to Hope in that game. Will take on Platteville, who was 5-20 last season. That is at the Beth Baker Classic in Wheaton. They'll then play the winner of the Wheaton side of that bracket, or loser, I should say. They'll play the other side of the bracket on Saturday. Game time to be decided. We'll look forward to watching how Trine does and what could be a very interesting MIAA women's race. When we come back, we'll switch gears and go into some men's basketball. We up ahead, Pat Coleman took the time to go all the way up to northern New York, talk to the SUNY-Canton head coach. We'll talk to him, and we will slide a little bit southwest of there and go to Case Western Reserve, where a coach has changed. A former assistant is now head. We'll talk to Todd McGinnis. That's all ahead, plus more. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. More Hoopsville right after this.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
For the love of the game. That's what it's all about, they say. But for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that.
It's more about team and the schools and communities we represent.
And for the many of us blessed with the strength to compete in sport at the college level, we understand that with what we were given comes a special obligation.
Our obligation to help those who have their own special needs and whose love for the game is no less intense.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics. Since August of 2011, we and others from Division III campus communities have volunteered more than 250,000 hours, time away from the classroom and practice field, reaching across the country to coach and mentor Special Olympics athletes.
And to learn that in giving, we receive so much more in return. Help us keep that dream alive.
Be part of it.
Get involved.
You can make a difference.
My name is Marcus Walker. I was All-State, won a state championship, a high school All-American, and played college and pro ball. I played because I love the game. I grind to be the best. I sweat because I put in work. I'm strong because I believe. When I want to bring it before game time, I come to the house that college basketball built, the CBE. No matter your skill, take it to another level. Elevate your game right here at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody, on a Thursday evening, our first Thursday show of the year. Of course, we're off to a bang with the Thomas More story, but also have been talking other parts of basketball. Just got done talking to two women's basketball programs at Claremont-Mudd-Scripps and at Trine. Of course, if you've missed any of our show on live, you can always back up now, though I wouldn't suggest it right now. We have more to cover, but you can always back up if you want to and listen to some of the stuff we've already covered. Of course, it'll be on demand once we are off the air, and we also have the podcast that many people listen to, so lots of ways to catch back up if you've missed any of it so far. Of course, you can always tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville if you want to be part of the conversation or follow along throughout the basketball season. You can also join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. We're also on Instagram at D3Hoopsville there as well, though we don't really maintain that during the show. That's more of a promotional thing, or keeping track of things in the season as well. Of course, you can also email us, Hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Much of that information scrolling at the bottom of your screen. All right, switching gears, going to talk men's basketball, and got an opportunity. I didn't, but Pat Coleman did. Guess he can't get rid of the hoops side just quite yet, and I can't blame him necessarily. But during one of his football visits to New York State, he decided to drop through Canton, New York. If you know where Canton, New York is, you know Pat was well out of his way to do this, but he did it nonetheless, and he dropped by to talk to SUNY-Canton men's basketball. They're in their fourth season in the NCAA Division III, last year going 20-4, but not getting a sniff of much attention from anybody, including conferences. Can't even get into a conference. Well, Pat Coleman decided to take the time to find out more about SUNY-Canton and the Kangaroos, and he talked to Ben Thompson for us. Here's that interview. Three, two, one. Thanks once again to Pat for doing that for us, and thank you, Ben Thompson, for taking the time out of his schedule to join Pat. Fascinated to see what the Virginia Tech alum can do with the Kangaroos, what they're going to be able to do with their schedule, which starts off on Friday against Elmira at the tournament at Oswego State, which is just a little bit down the road from. Of course, technical difficulties. Doesn't it always work that way? Give us a moment here. I know where the audio is, the video of Pat so graciously helped us with. Doesn't have to always go perfectly, does it? Give us me a moment here. We will get it called up. We had some technical difficulties earlier with it. My computer didn't like it too much, and I made some changes, and those changes have come back to bite me. So just give me a moment, and I will call up the interview that Pat did. Trust me, he did it with SUNY's head coach. I know you're waiting for it, especially those who may have seen it on Twitter as us going to be doing that segment. So just bear with me while I'm scanning my folder for it. Again, if you don't know where SUNY is, it's up there. It's in the difficult sections of it, as it were, of New York State. St. John Fisher certainly knows the pain of playing up there. It is very far north, to say the least. It turns out this probably doesn't like us, and that's why we're having trouble finding it. So bear with me as I continue to look for it. We're going to take a break while I continue to look for it because it is not showing up in our system, which is a bad sign for some other reason. So we're going to take a quick break. When we return, I'll hopefully have that commercial. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. The NABC WBCA studios. More after this.
My name is Marcus Walker. I was All-State, won a state championship, a high school All-American, and played college and pro ball. I played because I love the game. I grind to be the best. I sweat because I put in work. I'm strong because I believe. When I want to bring it before game time, I come to the house that college basketball built, the CBE. No matter your skill, take it to another level. Elevate your game right here at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I know how powerful words can be. The term gay doesn't mean stupid, lame, or less than.
So I pledge to speak up if I hear the term gay used in a derogatory way or any other homophobic terms.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and my teammates unconditionally accepted me as part of their family. So now I pledge to do the same for others. If you can play in Division III.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at d3hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Great moments are born from great opportunity. That's what you have here tonight. That's what you've earned here tonight. This is your time. Now go out there and take it.
All right, so welcome back. We are experiencing difficulties with the interview Pat Coleman conducted for us with the Roos head coach, Ben Thompson. I apologize for those. We thought we had them solved earlier today. Apparently, we didn't. I know what the problem is. We are working to solve it as we speak, as it's processing for me. But as a result, it's going to take a little while. So what we're going to do is take one more break. I'm going to adjust. We're going to go get our next guest, Case Western Reserve head coach, Todd McGinnis. Sorry, Todd. We'll get him on the show, talk to him about things, and then we'll get you that Roos interview. Stay with us. You're listening to Hoops Hope, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA and ABC studios. I promise you, we will have an interview coming up next, right after this.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor's Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
It starts right when you hit the court. You imagine your finest moment. The game-winning shot that gets you to the dance. A monster dunk or no-look pass, and cutting down the net. Sports lets us dream of our own success and prepare us for our finest moments on and off the court.
I'm a current Division III student athlete, and I remember how intimidating the first year of college can be.
So if you're a first-year student athlete and nervous about coming out as LGBTQ, I pledge to stand by your side as your ally.
If you can play Division III.
We are Division III student athletes, and you can be too. If you can play in Division III.
I did receive a non-athletic scholarship upon entering school.
I got the presidential scholarship, which was huge for me.
I think there's more opportunities for academic scholarships in Division III.
I did receive academic scholarships. Just being involved on campus, being a leader, all those things combined kind of get me recognized. It's a great experience for me.
Again, technical difficulties. I apologize to all those who were waiting for the interview with SUNY-Canton. We're hoping to turn it around for this evening. We are working on that. In the meantime, we'll just go to our next interview, take advantage of the opportunity. We still have one more guest available, and then we will get that interview in, we hope, knock on wood, with SUNY-Canton. We're just kind of waiting for it all kind of to process for us. I'm hopeful, but we'll move on. In the meantime, we're talking about new programs on the men's side, or really kind of coaches kind of moving around. SUNY-Canton, kind of a new program. It's been around for a few years. Case Western Reserve, not exactly a new program. It's certainly been around for a few years, but they're under the tutelage, under the guidance of a new head coach. He's a former assistant coach, Todd McGinnis, who decided to leave Hartwick and go to Case Western Reserve this year. So he leaves the Empire 8, which was a pretty decent conference, and jumps into the UAA, which is a really darn good conference. And Case Western Reserve had a decent season last year, but it fell about midway through the pack before their head coach decided that he was going to step away and do something different. Of course, he was a friend of the program. We loved Sean McDonald for what he has done for us, and we appreciate the time he has spent. But Todd McGinnis is now the man in charge, and so we go to the Hoopsville hotline. And joining us there is Todd McGinnis. Sir, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Absolutely. Well, I'm doing as well as we can early in the season. And speaking of which, you guys went to Baldwin-Wallace on Tuesday, and I have a feeling, because I've gotten to know you pretty well, that loss did not sit well with you.
Yeah, it was, we actually hosted Baldwin-Wallace here.
I'm sorry, right. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we had we played well in the first half. Our guys are trying to do what we ask of them. They, we missed some foul shots. We were 5 for 11 or somewhere around that from the foul line. Ended up 10 for 22 from the foul line. So that was a little bit of a frustration for me. As I hope we can improve on that. But, the guys are playing hard, and, we got a lot out of them. And, Baldwin-Wallace, I was really impressed. I didn't know what to expect. They had a lot of returners. And after the game, midway through the second half, and they started banging, making threes, and we were struggling keeping up with them making threes, and we were missing some. And, I thought they were they did a good job. They were well coached, and, they were well prepared. And we played it. We played hard. We just need to play better.
You knew a little bit of the challenges you were going to face when you took over this program, obviously, when you decided to leave Hartwick. But before we get into what the reality is, what did you expect to find when you came to Case Western? Obviously, as we said, a former assistant here, so you certainly know the program well. But what did you expect to find in terms of manpower, in terms of recruiting and stuff like that when you took over the program?
It's it's been a good change. I was lucky enough. We have the ability here to do some things that just some other schools might not have to do. And this summer, when I first got the job, I moved here. It was a crazy summer with everything going on in Cleveland with the National Convention, Republican National Convention, and I got offered a job. I was still in New York, and so I moved here on a Tuesday. We started practice on Wednesday because we actually go on an international trip every 3 years, funded by our alumni and former players. So we got here.
Thrown into the fray.
And moved. The next day started practice. Then my fiance, she's still in New York, so she came down the night before we left to go to Belize. We went there for 7 days. So I was actually able to coach the team. So I was able to figure out, what we had, what I thought was going to be the best way for us to play. And that's still a work in progress. But, recruiting's going well. Kids are very interested. You mentioned the name of Case Western Reserve, and kids know it right away, and then they look to see who you play, and you fly over the country and play I mention is all the time that we're the, everyone says we're the Ivy League of Division III, our league, and I say, yeah, that is true, but we're also probably the ACC with our travel and the people you're playing. I said,
true.
It's a big time competition, so I expected the guys to be working hard, which they did, and they're great kids. They're all high achievers. They're all they all are working their butts off in the classroom, not only on the court, but they're going to be engineers and doctors and lawyers. So they're working hard and on and off the floor here.
Todd, they're going to put us all to shame and play better basketball than I ever could. Of course, you know the area a little bit. You're a graduate of Bethany, so you're not that far removed from the upstate New York area where Hartwick was located. You're not that far removed from the Cleveland area necessarily. Is this kind of feeling like you're a little bit coming back to home?
Yeah, with growing up in the Pittsburgh area, it's not far from my family. It's, closer than I've been for them for a while. Instead of 7 hours, it's 2 hours. It's a great area. Cleveland's really up and coming. It's, with the Cavs winning this year and, the Indians, it was insane around here when the Indians were playing. I don't live too far from the stadium, and when they hit that home run to tie it in the 8th or whatever, or the 9th, whatever inning that was, my house was, you could hear the stadium going nuts. So it was, it's been great around here. Everyone knows Cleveland now, so I think it's been a help with recruiting, and with LeBron being back, I think it's really piqued kids' interest when I talk to them. I know Cleveland, and we're about 3 miles from downtown, so it's we're in a nice area. We got a beautiful campus, and it's a place I really think we can grow into being a really quality program to whatever extent that can be. I just don't know what that. At this point, I don't know what that can be right now.
As a Cubs fan, talking about the 8th inning home run is fine since they won. If they had lost, we would have ended the conversation immediately. But as a Ravens fan,
I forgot you're a Cavs fan. Yeah,
a Cubs fan. Cubs fan.
Cavs,
yeah,
sorry
not
about
Cavs,
that.
Cubs. Yeah, but it's fine because they won. But as a Ravens fan, I'm not sure we can talk anymore. But anyway, let's get back to business though. You're in one of the toughest conferences in the country, even if it is a bit arguably down from where it has been. You've got a program that certainly was in the mix of it in the last couple of years, though maybe underachieved slightly, depending on whose eyes are looking at it. You have a program that certainly is in flux a little bit after a longtime coach has departed, and you come in after being an assistant coach there once before. And then, of course, your first loss isn't the way you wanted it to go. What's going to be your biggest challenge this year, and what's going to be your biggest challenge over the next 5 years, if, not assuming you're there for 5, but, on the idea that you're there for 5?
I plan on being here for 5 or more, so hopefully
there you go.
Here
Good.
For 5 years.
Good.
I think that, the biggest challenge is just, finding the right student athletes, the ones that can afford the cost, the ones that can get in and actually, and can do the work.
Yeah.
And, just finding more guys that can shoot. I think that's our biggest challenge this year is if you looked at my teams in the past, we shoot 30 to 43s, and, we just got to play different. So, as a coach, it's a learning experience because we just got to play, a little bit different than what my teams have played in the past. But, we have good guys. It's just a matter of getting the best out of them and, giving them a positive experience. And we will. We're going to figure out if you watch this play Tuesday, you might see a whole different style of play Friday, so tomorrow night. So we changed some stuff after the first game, tweaked some stuff, figured out we need to do a little bit different. And, the guys are working hard. So my biggest challenge is just making, figuring out what will be the right way for us to play. And, if you watch, I say all the time, if you watch us play this year, it might be a little different than what we'll look like in 3 years from now. And, and hopefully we're going to get the most out of them. And they're great kids and they're working hard. And, I don't go to my office every day thinking, oh my gosh, I got to deal with this guy or this. I go to my office every day thinking I get to coach great kids that are going to work as hard as they can. And, we'll put them in the right position and hopefully, we can make the plays to, compete. That's what we've been stressing is, when we compete, winning take care of itself. We just got to get to that point where we compete every day in practice, and the winning will always come from there. And, hopefully we've been working a lot of foul shooting, Dave. If anyone out there has any drills that's listening, please email them to me because we need to figure out how to make some foul shots.
I believe you line up on the free throw line facing the basket, and you take a basketball and you shoot at it, and you keep shooting until you can consistently make the shot.
Yeah, we've talked about 2 or 3 of my big guys about going granny style here soon.
Hey,
so,
I've been told that that's not a style that you should shun, that it's got a much better percentage rate to it.
Yeah, I told him, I had a conversation with 2 of them. I said, if you're not, by the 3rd or 4th game, if you're not over 50%, we're going to talk about it. And I said, hey, it's good because then I'll get on Hoopsville again because we'll be talking about the 2 guys that shoot underhand foul shots. So.
It's true. I might ask for some video about that. Hey, listen, you used to be on the East Regional Committee, if nobody knew, so you've got to know the East Region. As a result, you certainly got to know Rochester, you got to know NYU a little bit, and by default, you've gotten to know the UAA, especially from your past assistant coaching tenure, as we talked about. Last year, Emory won the conference at 11-3. Rochester was 10-4, kind of came storming in the last half of the season. NYU faded to a 9-5 after really surprising many to being in the conversation to begin with. Chicago ended up not being as great as everyone thought at 8-6, and WashU fell to 7-7. This year, Emory was thought to be pretty good. They lost the first game of the season. Rochester certainly, and people like myself, think are going to be pretty good. NYU lost a lot. No one's expecting much out of them. Chicago had a buzzer beater to lose their first game of the season. WashU's at least off to 1-0. Of course, we have yourselves, Carnegie Mellon, and I've been told by many in New England they think Brandeis is going to be a player this year. What do you make of the UAA this season?
I would say the best teams, the teams that I know the most, like you said, just from being on the rack, are NYU, and NYU hasn't played, but I know with they graduated a lot. I don't know what I don't know what they have coming in. I haven't really looked that much. I've been worried about the teams we're playing here a little bit, but I know they graduated a lot. I saw Rochester. I looked, popped on some film of them against Ithaca, especially with Ithaca being in the conference, and that was a battle the other night. And I thought Ithaca had a chance to be pretty good this year. And, look on the outside looking in, I thought Rochester, Luke does a really good job, and they're well coached and they have really good players this year. So I'd imagine they're going to be good. And I think my welcome to reality moment was a little bit when Wash U was playing at Illinois and they were up in the first half.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I think Wash U is going to be pretty good if they're playing at a Big Ten school and winning in the first half. So I think every night, and of course Emory, they have a lot of returners. They lost some guys, so I think it might take them a little while, maybe here early, but I think they'll be rolling before we know it. I don't doubt with the guys they have that they'll be in a national talk again with top 25, everything. Slip up maybe in the first game, and I'm sure they'll be refocused and ready to go. But I think and I don't. Chicago has good guys. I just don't know the teams in the Midwest that well. But in the East, I definitely expect Rochester to be good. And I've heard Brandeis people were they thought they were going to be pretty good too. So I know that. And I don't know Mellon that well, but I know Mellon has a couple of really good big guys. So from what I've heard, so we'll start worrying about them in January. We need to worry about taking care of Trinity tomorrow night on our home court. So.
Carnegie Mellon started off 1-0 on the season as well. Let's talk about your schedule real quick. Baldwin Wallace is now behind you, ahead of you. Got a tournament at home against, you got a motley crew here coming in. Trinity, Texas with Pat Cunningham. You've got Hampton Sydney with D. Vick. You got Brockport State with, darn it,
Greg Dunn.
Thank you. Dunn walking in the door there. You got an interesting quartet there. You'll have Trinity, Texas in the first one and wait for whoever wins or loses. Then Denison, Adrian. Then you take on Lynchburg down at Juniata. And you'll either play Juniata or St. Joseph's after that. Bethany, you got possibly Center or Geneseo. Penn State, Harrisburg. You got a motley crew. You then go to, by the way, you're playing in 3 tournaments. You then go to Franklin and Marshall, where you'll play Penn State, Harrisburg, or then F&M or Canton on the other side of things. And then you get into conference play. I know you didn't have a lot to do with that schedule, but how do you prepare for that schedule? Because it is all over the place and a lot of back-to-back stuff.
Yeah, there's it's an interesting schedule. It's we just got to deal with it the best we can, and I don't mind the tournaments; they get you prepared, for games. And it's a little different because in Empire 8 we're used to Friday, Saturday, so I like playing in tournaments there to get prepared for the season. And here, with our classes, it's really hard to the academics going on here, and our finals are a little bit longer than I'm used to, and end a little bit later. That we got to figure out how to schedule as best as we can, and just I think there was a late cancellation that we were supposed to go somewhere else during Thanksgiving, and now we're going to Franklin Marshall right after a tournament. So it's going to be a little bit of travel, but interesting. We'll be prepared. The guys are, they know, and we'll luckily we have a few of them at home, but there's no easy games on there. You're mentioning those names, and I'm not thinking, oh gosh, there's an easy one there. Every game we're going to have to play our best to win, and that's what you play this game for, is to compete and play good people. You don't want to play bad people every game.
I should say you have 4 tournaments. You have your own, and then you have 3 on the road. 9th and 10th in Juniata, December. 29th and 30th.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's a tournament, too. I forgot. Yeah, that's
29th and 30th.
Fun.
You're at, I don't know where you're at. Oh, is that at home again as well, I guess?
That's at home.
Okay,
yeah,
so you have 2 home tournaments, and then you head to Franklin and Marshall for the 2nd and 3rd of January. So 4 of them. What's the long-term expectation for yourself? What do you think you can do with this program, and what is arguably one of the toughest conferences in the country?
I think there's a few, as a coach, we keep, the recruit at a high level. My biggest things are the most conference wins, I believe, are 6 out of 14, and the most wins in the school history, 17. My team's at Hartwick. I think I was the head coach. I know I was the head coach for 7 years, and in those years I averaged 17 or 18 wins a year. So those are the goals, are to just to get to those points. As me as a coach, but with my team, it's let's compete in on a nightly basis. Let's make every game at home as tough as we can. And, I think with the UAA, with the travel, I think you have to take advantage of the Sunday games at home. I think you have to be able to win those games. And, the road games are tough, but, at home, I think people flying in and you can take advantage and win some of those games. And, we just got to figure it out. But I think we can be a contender. I think, if everything goes right and we recruit right and, we went from Hartwick from not having a winning season since 1995 to being one of the most successful Division III programs in the country with 4 out of 6 NCAA tournaments. I think there were 13 programs in the country in the last 6 years have been to more or the same amount. So, if we can do that there, I think we can do it at a place that has, more resources, a better, a name of Case Western Reserve, a top 35 university in the country. I think, we can get the kids here and build where we don't want to. And, when I took the job, I thought, when I took the Hartwick job, I always thought we were going to win, and people thought I was crazy. And maybe they think the same thing about me here. But, we're going to work as hard as we can, and hopefully it happens, and I believe it's going to happen. And, I think that's the players need to believe, that buy in and believe that, we're going to compete and figure out exactly what that means after that.
Before I let you go, how hard was it to leave Hartwick after 7 years of, we'll say success? I mean, you did pretty well there.
Yeah, it wasn't, it wasn't easy. Hartwick was great to me. I have a lot of great friends in Oneonta. They gave me that was my original first assistant job right out of college. It's it's a great school. The athletic director, the president are great people. They were nothing but good to me when I was there. It was hard. It wasn't an easy decision, especially with, my fiance still being there. She's trying to make the move here and, trying to do all that stuff. So, but it wasn't, but when I got offered a job, I actually was on vacation with my family and I was sitting there. My brother's actually the athletic director at Washington and Jefferson College, and it's his birthday. Yeah. And I know he's listening. So happy birthday. So, it was, I remember we were getting ready to go out to eat, and I got the call, and I walked out, and, the AD here, Amy Backus, said, you can call me back, like, tomorrow. And I walked out, and I think they just told me, you better go call her back right now and say you take it. Like, let's not think about this. You got a chance to be a coach in the UAA. Those jobs aren't easy to get, and they don't open too often if you look at them. So, it was great. Hartwick was great. They had a good win the other night. I think their talent's pretty good, and the kids were great. And I miss it. But I'm on a new challenge, and as a coach, you gotta what's right for you. What's right for your family, and then take advantage of the opportunity to work at a top 30 school and one of the best conferences in America. Those don't come around too often.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join us, and certainly I'm interested to see how this Spartan squad does, not only this season but down the road as well, as you are now both feet in the UAA, and obviously with everything that comes with that. I know you've been looking forward to it, so I'm looking forward to seeing how it all works out. As always, you give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those tuning in?
No. Thank you for having us, and I talked to my sports information director today, and we said we need to move the Hoopsville Classic to Cleveland in a couple of years. We said we need to get Dave and the crew up to Cleveland, get them out of Maryland for the Hoopsville at some point.
Well, you call me. You never know. Maybe we could discuss that. No, but in seriousness, you never know. Thanks so much. Take care of yourself, and I'm sure we'll drop by when we're in Cleveland next time.
Okay, perfect. Thanks again, and talk to you soon. Thanks, Dave.
Definitely. Take care, Todd. Tom McGinnis joining us from Case Western Reserve. Again, team's off to an 0-1 start. We'll see what the program can do, but it's an interesting move from Hartwick into the UAA. Obviously, he has roots there, but I'm fascinated to see how that's going to turn out. The UAA is tough. I mean, plain and simple, and we've seen it maybe adjust a little bit. Again, I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen this year. I think Rochester's a dark horse that no one's talking about. But Emory was one of the higher-ranked teams and is already off to an 0-1 start. Speaking of all that, we can talk about the chaos coming up, but we fixed that interview with the Roos head coach, Ben Thompson, from Pat Coleman. So we're going to go to that now. We're not going to take a break. Just save our time, get to it, do it, and take care of business afterward. So here is Pat Coleman talking to Ben Thompson from SUNY-Canton. We appreciate you standing by for that interview, and here it is.
Thanks, Dave, and greetings from the edge of nowhere here in Canton, New York. It's SUNY-Canton. I'm Pat Coleman for Hoopsville, and I'm joined by Ben Thompson, the head coach of the Roos, the Kangaroos, just the Roos of SUNY-Canton, head coach here for the first season of one of the few independent teams in Division III men's basketball and one of the most remote teams in Division III altogether. When I said edge of nowhere, it's because I think I went through Canada on the way here, and I'm not sure I was intending to do so. But it's you guys are pretty isolated from the rest of Division III.
Yeah, we are. But we've kind of got our own little oasis up here in the North Country, and it's a great area, having rivals, 4 schools within 10 miles of one another. So it's a great college town and a great college area. It's just a little further away than some other schools. So.
Yeah, you guys, St. Lawrence, Potsdam, and I'm missing somebody right off the bat. Clarkson, yeah. So we're talking about you guys specifically having to deal with a couple of things that this kind of brings up, right? First of all, you guys, as I mentioned, are independent, so you're not in a conference, which I think, as most viewers of our show know, that makes it really difficult to fill out a schedule, especially once January and February roll around.
Yeah, it does. But fortunately, we were able to get some high-quality games against, some top 25 teams, some teams that are, receiving votes, and several teams that went to the NCAA tournament, last year. So this will definitely be the toughest schedule that Canton has played in basketball. But our guys are excited. They're ready, as you saw earlier, and so they're raring to go for November 18th against Elmira.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, because I think Dave and the viewers might find that story interesting. Division III is still a relatively new, a brand here at this institution. Canton's not been in Division III very long. This is your first year as the head coach here as well. What's your, I guess, adjustment to Division III being like?
Yeah, basketball is basketball, and you've got to adjust to some of the rules, here and there, and compliance and those sorts of things. But, we've adjusted pretty well, and the guys have really kind of bought into what we're doing and the vision that we have for the program. And we think that we have a chance to be successful and to be, one of those top 25 teams in the country and compete for an NCAA tournament berth.
Last year, this team was 19-3 in the regular season, 20-4 overall. But really, at that, and I don't even remember what the Division III record was, because there weren't a whole lot of Division III opponents. But basically, not a sniff of the NCAA tournament. And how do you come into a program like that, knowing that it's a team that posted a really great record last year, but really had no chance at what the rest of Division III had a shot at?
Yeah, I think it's just something where we had to continue to move the schedule forward, and we have to, being an independent, we have to get the committee's attention. And so I think we've done that with the schedule. We'll play 18, 19 D3 games this year, which is, almost double what they've played in the past. And so, it's a chance for our guys to show and legitimize our program that we can play with anybody in the country, top 25. It doesn't matter. We'll schedule obviously those tougher games, and most of them are on the road this year. So our guys have bought in and are going at it full steam, and they're excited.
So the story I was referencing earlier, I arrived near the end of practice here at this. This is a preseason practice taped here in the early November, and Coach sent all of his players over to introduce themselves to me, and then they were starting to grill me about what it would take to make the NCAA tournament. And, with Pool B being basically non-existent in Division III basketball at this point, Canton not having an automatic bid to play for, only playing 17, maybe 19 Division III opponents, I basically ended up telling them they have to run the table, because, as we saw with Lancaster Bible last year, I'm not sure there are any other alternatives.
Yeah, we've got a mentality with our guys that we, kind of approach it kind of like a college football, mentality where, if you lose one game, you could be out of the playoffs. So we've just got a focused mentality of who's next, and who's next for us right now is Elmira. And we're not looking beyond to the schedule. We know that there's some other things out there, but we kind of have that college football approach where we just have to win the next game. That's our most important game. And so our thing is who's next.
So of the players that went 20-4 last year, how many guys do you have back?
Yeah, so 6 of them are back. 6 of them are back. We've got a roster of 18 now. Romario Fletcher, Sam and Noor both kind of led them last year. Both averaged right around 17 points a game. And, both of them I think will have a chance to get some All-American votes. And then there's some other solid role players that are coming back. Adrian Williams is a junior. Rashad Richardson is a senior. Walt Jeter is a junior, and so some of those guys have a lot of game experience, and some of them are going to have to step up and really develop, and they've really done so to this point, and they're chomping at the bit, and we're still 2 weeks away from today. So
you were telling me about you referenced it as a conference tournament. It feels like more like just like a federation of teams meeting at the end of the season for a postseason tournament. But tell us a little bit about that concept.
Yeah, so there's some independents that have kind of joined together that'll be probably be announced shortly. They've already held we actually hosted the cross country championships, and so. I don't know that I'm at liberty to say where it's at yet, but there's some independents up in the area here that have kind of clustered together, and we'll be starting our own conference. And so, the process has already started with that. Our athletic director, Randy Saminsky's been great about moving that process forward, and so it's something that our guys are excited about. Hopefully, we'll get to play at least one, if not 2 games there, and then hopefully that'll enhance our resume for the tournament bid.
A new conference, potentially, if you have 7 Division III schools, at some point after a couple-year waiting period and a lot of paperwork and probably some other sports besides basketball, you guys would have the opportunity to compete for an automatic bid as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the process that they're moving towards. So I'm not privy to all the information. I'm not sure exactly what that process is, but I know that that's the goal, and that's the direction that they're heading in.
So I know you mentioned focused on Elmira, but you guys have Franklin and Marshall on the schedule. You guys have Oswego, or at least you're at Oswego's tournament, playing SUNY Old Westbury, playing DePauw. There's some brand name Division III programs on that schedule.
Yeah, we felt like we had to. To be the best, you got to beat the best. And so that's a mantra that we took on, and then our guys, they wanted to be challenged with the schedule, and to be quite frank, we had to have a chance to play for that, NCAA tournament berth. And so our guys, they know the goal, they know the mission, they know our vision, they know what's ahead, and so that's great. But we got to get past Elmira.
You got the job pretty late in the spring, right? So beyond, very well. I mean, that's spring up here, right?
Yeah, for sure, it is.
But beyond the whole recruiting calendar and all that, so didn't have necessarily an opportunity to go out and get kids coming in this year. But what's the general recruiting footprint of this team? Where are you expecting or hoping to get kids from?
Yeah, we actually brought in 10 new guys, and so we were able to get several freshmen that are really good, a couple transfers. Obviously, New York is going to be big for us. I have a lot of ties from the South and the Midwest, and so the South is going to be big. We're going to try to dip in, obviously New York, but into Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. We're going to kind of be all over, and we're going to recruit, somewhat. Nationally, we're recruiting some kids out of Las Vegas right now, and actually globally some other countries as well. So we're going to dig under rocks, through valleys, wherever we can find guys that fit into what we want to do, how we want to play, and fit who we are as people and what we stand for. And so our focus is just going to be finding the best people and the best players wherever they are.
When you bring those kids up here, what's the culture shock going to be like? I mean, even for me, as a Midwesterner, so kind of maybe somewhat similar, certainly similar climate, but scrolling through the radio dial and half of the radio stations are in French. That's just a completely different atmosphere.
Yeah, it is. But I think once people get up here and they kind of see how it's our own little oasis, if guys are really focused on what they're doing in college as far as their academics and their basketball, there's not a ton of time really to go out and do other things in general. And, Watertown's got a big military base and is only 45 minutes away. I mean, Syracuse is less than a couple hours away. So, it may seem kind of more secluded than what it actually is. And Ottawa is 45 minutes away, 40 minutes away. So, it's not as secluded as it may seem.
As long as you got your passport to actually get to Ottawa. So here on Hoopsville, we always give the coach the final word. Dave, I remembered. I don't always remember when I do guest interviews for Hoopsville, but we always give the coach the final word. So any final shout-outs or anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, we just have a mantra with our team called Strength in Numbers. And so it's going to take all of us to get our vision and reach our goals. And so that's kind of how we're approaching it. Who's next? With Strength in Numbers.
It's Ben Thompson, head men's basketball coach here at SUNY-Canton. Back to Dave on Hoopsville. Thanks, Dave.
And thank you, Pat. Appreciate you taking the time to do that. And thank you, Ben Thompson, for taking the time as well. And thank you to you who were waiting for that interview a while ago. We couldn't get it to work, and it's finally working. Great insight, to say the least. At the same time, interesting things to pick up there. First, student athletes interested in what gets them into the NCAA tournament. That's great to hear. When we get the student athletes involved, when we get them to understand how this all works, outside of just the coaches doing it, it helps maybe foster a little bit more competition. But great for them. Yeah, I mean, people, they were 20-4 last year. They top up the 18 games. They certainly have some good 18 games ahead of them. Looking forward to seeing how they do. We'll keep an eye on the Roos. I'm very interested to see how it plays out. Another thing to take in mind there is clearly some work being done on possibly making a conference. He mentioned 4 schools. Obviously, that'd be below the AQ number, but that doesn't mean they don't get the ball rolling and start working towards solving that. I'm not going to guess as to what they're talking about. We do know there's other independents up there, or at least in the area, I should say. And who knows how far they spread with that. But Alfred State, for example, is an independent. You also wonder, New Rochelle is an independent. And we mentioned Canton, so that's 3 just in the East region alone. You never know if some teams from other conferences decide to leave. I certainly don't want to make any assumptions. We know the Liberty League is desperate to get another school in to solidify a football AQ, and time is running out. But maybe that flips the other direction and teams get tired and move on. Maybe a conference implodes. Who knows? So this is interesting. We'll keep an eye on it. It takes 2 years to get an AQ. Once you hit your minimum, I'd be very interested to see how it all plays out from there. But thanks again to Ben Thompson. Thanks to Pat Coleman for making a trip up there during his football trips to get us that. It was certainly insightful and fascinating to hear. A couple thoughts. By the way, Babson won tonight by scoring 90 points. If you add in the fact that they put up 101 on opening night, Babson's offense looks pretty darn good, does it not? Averaging about 95 points a game in 2 games. I know it's the first 2 games, but that is significant in my opinion to have 2 games that high on the offense. Now, granted, they played LaSalle this week and today. I don't remember who they played in the last game. Not that I can't find that with relative ease. They played Albertus Magnus, who we've known over the years has been pretty solid. They beat them by 20, 101-81, and then beat LaSalle today, 90-72. They don't really have much of a challenge with Anna Maria coming up. Endicott after that, then Becker. Then it kind of gets interesting. Bowdoin, Bates, Salem State before they face off against Amherst. So Babson will play 9 games before they play Amherst on the 8th. They're jamming in a lot before exams, and then they take a long extended break before they fly randomly to Chicago to play Chicago, and then fly home to play Emerson in conference play. So Babson getting a lot of work done early this season. We'll keep an eye on the Beavers and see what they do along the way, to say the least. Breaking news. Thank you, Ryan Scott. Cal Lutheran's coach Rich Ryder has announced that he's retiring today after 22 seasons. That is huge. I'm going to quickly go to their website. Cal Lu hasn't even played a game. They start Friday against UC Santa Cruz, the Banana Slugs, and then we'll play Linfield. Those games all at Santa Cruz. There's the story. And actually, the announcement was yesterday. It appears on their website, so that's interesting. That one snuck out yesterday afternoon. Rich Ryder, the winningest men's basketball coach in Cal Lutheran history, retiring at the start, just as the season starting. Assistant coach Jeff Daines has been named interim head coach for the season because clearly you're not opening the job now. We had some crazy long job searches, but that one's insane to start now. National search to fill the position will begin soon. That's interesting wording. Especially if it followed. Assistant coach Jeff Daines has been named interim head coach for this season. CLU athletic director Dan Kuntz said a national search to fill the position would begin soon. I'm not sure if that's just miswritten. Maybe the national search will start later in the season. I can't imagine you would start it now if you've named an interim for the season, but whatever. His decision to retire at the start of the season was not easy. However, he was pressing family concerns that he felt will prevent him from dedicating the time and energy necessary to effectively coach a successful team. That coming from Cal Lutheran President Chris Kimball in an email to faculty and staff. The entire community, quote, was saddened by the news. Ryder, who is age 70, did not specify a reason for the timing of his retirement, saying it was just personal. It's been on my mind, and the time and place occurred a couple of weeks ago that it was just the right time. I've got an excellent staff that can take over on an interim basis and continue moving forward. So I just had some other items that I had to take care of, and I made the decision to take care of them now as opposed to later. That's all. He was 345 and 207 at Cal Lu in 22 years with 3 conference titles, 1 NCAA Division III appearance. His total college record was 481 and 311. After coaching his final game, an exhibition game on November 8th, Ryder informed his team of his decision after having previously told his staff and Kuntz. This is all from the press release on their website. It's probably a little off-guarded. Ryder said of the team's reaction that was kind of a tough thing to say because you've been with those guys for weeks, months, and years. It's not easy to talk. So interesting move at CLU. We'll keep an eye on that one and the ramifications of that. Interesting note from Ryan Scott. Babson's plays a full third of the NESCAC schedule, 3 games this year in addition to their new MAC one. Ryan Scott, our new Around the Nation columnist for D3Hoops.com with a little tongue-in-cheek moment there. Very nice, sir. So anyway, interesting news out of Cal Lu. We will keep an eye on that. And again, I would have talked more about the scores. I was planning to show you my original plan late Tuesday night, or it really wasn't an original plan, but one of my ideas when I saw the video was to show you Hope versus Wheaton, but everything with the Thomas More case came together, and so we weren't able to show you the finish there. We have plenty of video online. Follow us on Twitter, D3H. I want to get to my final thoughts before I got to get off the air. This show went way too long as it was. The Thomas More infractions. There's a 16-page report you can read. As you can see, I've highlighted my sections that I found interesting. I should say it's 16 pages plus a 2-page appendix. Part of the appendix talks about some of the changes I'm going to go through. We mentioned at the beginning of every academic year, student-athletes will be required to complete a housing information form, which solicits information on where the student-athlete is living, whether college athletic, the staff member, or booster helped arrange it. Also at the beginning of the year, student-athletes were required to complete a vehicle information, which solicits the same information. There's lots of other things that will take place. Listen, I'm going to be honest. Thomas More made a mistake. They made a massive mistake. They used, as the report says, folklore and assumptions on a decision that, because of a previous relationship between Sidney Moss and the assistant coach, Coach Allen, that her staying with him was no big deal. I'll be blunt. I don't know the NCAA rules forwards, backwards, sideways, through and through, but I would have raised a red flag on that. It's just known that student-athletes can't exactly be staying somewhere with a coach or some administrator. Now, certainly there are exceptions, I believe. I don't know the exact nature of what happens when your head coach is your father. We have it in Division III. But this one, I think, would have raised a red flag for me. It did not raise a red flag for Jeff Hans. It did not raise a red flag for the AD when he found out about it X amount of time later. It did not raise a red flag for the compliance person for the school at a later time. The problem is, with all of this, and the NCAA will tell you this in nauseam, check with them. check with their compliance people. It's almost as much as you get a ton of training on compliance in the NCAA. Probably not enough to read through a very thick folder. There's the NCAA manual and there's the Division III manual. There's a lot to read, a lot to understand. There's no way you can memorize all that. Check. And that's clearly what Thomas More did not do. It cost him. It cost him big time. And I'm certainly not going to give them any slack for that mistake. It cost them a national title. I have some problems with this report. I have some problems with the punishment in this report when you compare it to some other schools. That's where I now have a problem. I'm not acknowledging Thomas More for not having screwed up royally. And as I said with Adam Turner, they stepped in it. They stepped in it big time. And they deserve to be punished for that. But in this report, I find a couple things disturbing. The word elite, as in to describe Sydney Moss, is used 3 times. Does it matter if she's the number 1 player on the team or the number 15 player on the team? If the infraction had happened to the number 15 player on the team, wouldn't the punishment should have been the same? And if you're saying it isn't because she is elite, then we have jumped off a dangerous bridge in Division III. I'd argue maybe the NCAA, but in Division I, I can see where this can be interesting. But in Division III, we don't have elite student athletes. We have student athletes. Elite student athletes are the ones who get scholarships. And I'm not saying that student athletes in Division III are not elite players. We're just all the same. We're all equal. We're not elite. We're not sub-elite. We're student athletes. We don't get money or a certain amount of money for the skill set. In Division II and Division I, in most sports where you can divvy up the scholarships, one athlete might get 2/3 of a scholarship, one might get a whole scholarship, one might get 1/3 of a scholarship. You can probably guess where they fit on the totem pole by that, don't you? Maybe you can argue one is elite and one is not. And I get that Sydney Moss was a former Division I player, and I get she's an incredible talent. She was a 3-time and will still be a 3-time Player of the Year for D3Hoops.com. Don't get me wrong, she's very good. But elite in a D3 report seems off base. Furthermore, this is the worst hidden student-athlete information I've ever read in the NCAA, and maybe I haven't read enough, but at least in Division III. You go back to the Baruch report, you go to the Kane report, you go to almost anyone, College of Staten Island, and you can maybe put 2 and 2 together to figure out who the student athlete is. If you see them no longer on a roster, you can probably figure it out. If they allude to something that maybe you can figure out who is specifically they're talking about on a team, especially if the team's a large enough team. They wrote Sydney Moss's bio, basically, in this report and called her student athlete because they don't name people in reports. I don't understand why half of this had to be included. She had a long-term relationship with the assistant coach. Got it. Met him in middle school. Got it. Friend of the family. Got it. Didn't need to know about her recruiting for Division I. Did not need to know about her recruiting and her basketball play in high school. Did not need to know about any of that. But they wrote it, and I just find it weird. It's weird. But here's my biggest problem. Thomas More had to vacate 33 games and a national title because an assistant coach felt that a student was maybe not in the best situation possible. Granted, was a friend of said student athlete for a long time, so personal feelings became involved, and tried to help that student athlete out post-operation. This was not a recruiting ploy. Sydney Moss wasn't going anywhere. We know that. We knew Sydney Moss wasn't going anywhere. We've discussed that. She wasn't transferring again. She didn't need money. She had been living on her own. So he felt for her welfare that it was better. Her neighborhood wasn't great. She's hobbling on one leg. Anybody who's had ACL reconstructive surgery certainly knows what you're going through. I don't. I've had other surgeries, but not that severe. So he helped her out. For that, and for the reason that Coach Hans didn't react and the AD didn't react in a timely manner, They lost 33 games off of a record. They lost a national title in the eyes of the NCAA. Doesn't mean the banner can't still hang, and it doesn't mean they don't keep their rings. That'll be interesting. I believe they are sending their trophy back. That's it. Baruch College got cut down by the NCAA over the summer, if you missed it. We all wondered why their head coach left a couple years ago. Turns out the investigation revealed that he and the former vice president were just a little bit shady, changing in-residence information so a student could be enrolled in the college, changing in-residence information so they could get cheaper tuition. Because you have to understand, Baruch, you have to be in state to take advantage of a lot of things, including get on the campus in the first place as a student. They changed those of students to make sure that they could get certain student athletes on their teams, especially women's basketball, so they could compete. The vice president driving the boat of making sure that they could be an elite athletic department. And the women's basketball coach was right along lockstep. They also got them jobs. One interesting thing I found in this report describing Sydney Moss's infraction, as it were, and forgive me, I didn't have it up like I wanted to. I'll find it quickly, I hope. Basically, that she got free room and board from this assistant coach to the amount of $5,000. I'm trying to I apologize. And that was a major problem, making her ineligible. I'm sorry. I wanted to find the words exactly, because I find the words interesting when comparing to Baruch. And apparently I can't find them, which is disappointing on my part. Oh, here we go. Nope, that wasn't it. So she's staying for free is basically what's happening. And so that's in the eyes of the NCAA, that was pretty bad. That's a no-no. Should never have happened. But you know what I find interesting about that? Happened at Baruch. They gave a couple student athletes the jobs of residential life people, which gave them free dorm rooms. They weren't qualified. They didn't go through the application process. They got sped to the front by the VP and put into these positions ahead of others and gave them free room. Isn't that the same? No vacated wins for Baruch. They still have a conference title that they get to hold on to. Why? Why does Baruch seem to get a hand slap? And I've had a problem with Baruch's case before this case. I compared it to Kane and thought Kane got a stiffer fine, but I thought Baruch purposely circumvented the rules to recruit and get players on campus to improve their athletics. Purposely did it, including keeping them on campus because they weren't going to be able to afford tuition, or they weren't going to be able to afford room, or they weren't be able to live off campus, so got them RA positions so they could live on campus for free. Purposely did it to improve their athletics department. Thomas More did not purposely keep Sydney Moss in an assistant coach's house because she couldn't afford it or she was going to go somewhere else. But they lose 33 games of their season and a national title. Baruch lost no games. Now, Baruch has a postseason ban, I believe. They're on probation. And there is a show of cause for the coach. So what I find is inconsistencies. Baruch gets a slap of the hand for the most part, but their coach, who's no longer there anyway, gets a show of cause if he ever wants to coach again. Their VP, who's no longer there, gets a show of cause if he's ever involved in athletics again, which isn't going to happen. It's not going to happen. Thomas More, there's no show of cause for Jeff Hans, and there's no postseason ban. I applaud that because you're not punishing the Curtin students. But you have punished them worse by taking a national title away and taking 33 games away than you did Baruch, who has conference championships. I just find inconsistencies. And by the way, the Kane case is repeatedly mentioned in this Thomas More case. Repeatedly. as an example of where they found problems with a head coach making a mistake. Quote, like the head coach at Kane, the head coach of Thomas More failed to consult with any athletics department staff members on key issue. The issue involved the student athlete who was receiving cost-free room and board. Again, cost-free room at Baruch. But back to the Kane case, the head coach was running the show. She didn't have to check in with any other buddy in athletics because when the AD called her on it and reported her twice, he got unceremoniously no longer re-signed to the job. He got let go. She ran the show. Jeff Hans isn't running the show. They mentioned the Kane case in here as if the two cases are similar. They aren't. And again, I'm not trying to say that Thomas More isn't at fault here. I just have a problem with how the NCAA Division III, and remember, it's Division III people who write these reports. I have a problem with this report. It's bad. The Baruch report was bad. They should have thrown the book at Baruch. They half threw the book at Baruch. I don't think Thomas More deserved the book being thrown at him. And I get the idea that if the student athlete is ineligible, they have to go through a basically have to be eligible. Go through I don't remember the exact word, I apologize. But go through a process that makes them eligible again. I get that. And that's why Sydney Moss ended up sitting out for 5 games at the beginning of last season to go through that process and then being said, you are eligible. But I find it weird, and this is an NCAA thing, and I found this weird for a long time, that in hindsight, a student can be ineligible for the period of time that they were, and then still ineligible until they go through the process of being eligible again, but in hindsight. So Sydney Moss was ineligible in November and December because she was staying at that former assistant coach's house. I get that. And he was an assistant coach at the time. I get that. That makes her ineligible. The next semester starts, she's living on her own. She's eligible in my eyes. I get you have to go through this process, but when you label it and put it on in hindsight, after the fact, when the school had no chance to make her eligible for that period of time anyway, and no, they wouldn't have made her eligible for November and December. I just find it weird. I don't know why that makes any sense to people. And I get all this basically stems from Jeff Hans assuming something that was folklore. I get it. I'm not saying they don't deserve to be punished. I just have problems with the inconsistencies of punishments. To be honest with you, we should be more pissed off about Baruch than we should be pissed off about Thomas More. But we're going to be more pissed off about Thomas More, and more people are going to be upset about Thomas More for 2 reasons. One, because Sydney Moss, a Division I player who transferred there, is the cause behind this, and people thought it was shady from the get-go, even though they had no facts. They're going to fall on this and say, see? When it's not apples to apples. So we're going to be people are going to be upset about it and point at it as if it's a big deal when it really wasn't. And the second reason is because it wasn't to better the program. She was already there. She had already played a year. She was going to play another year. Baruch purposely broke the rules to try and get a women's national title. And other programs too. Purposely broke the rules. And we're not going to be as angry about that. That's my problem. Baruch is a problem case. Kane was a problem case. I don't see Thomas More that way, but that's how we're going to remember it. And that's a problem in this division. And maybe we also need to change some of the rules in this division, but that's a whole other topic. On that note, I'm way late and we got to get off the air. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. I really appreciate it. I want to thank Adam Turr for coming on the show. I want to thank Jeff Hans for coming on the show as well. You did not have to. And by the way, I do want to note that he said to me he also wants to apologize to all of Division III. He doesn't want the division to have this as a storyline. Hats off to him for at least saying that. He made a mistake. He's owned it. He made a mistake, and it's cost him dearly. I want to thank Kristen Dowling from Claremont-Mudd-Scripps as well. I want to thank Ryan Gould from Trine. I want to thank Todd McGinnis from Case Western Reserve. Sorry, Todd. Also, Pat Coleman, again, thanks for the interview with Ben Thompson, and thank you, Ben, for taking the time as well. That's going to do it for us. We'll be back on. We're not going to be on the air Sunday. Remember the Hoopsville Classic's coming up. Didn't get a chance to talk a lot about that, but come on, tune in. Stevens Point, Marietta, Christopher Newport, Lynchburg, Randolph-Macon, Albright, Stevenson. I'm forgetting one. It's going to be good basketball. It's going to be really good basketball. You ought to tune in. Skidmore. You should have fun with that. So tune in all weekend. Gordon Mann, myself, will be there along with Frank Rossi, the former York coach Jeff Gamber, Chris Pisotsky, former assistant coach at Cabrini, will all be calling the games throughout the weekend. Ryan Scott will be there as well. So please tune in. We'll have all those coaches' interviews set up for our Sunday version of the show. You get to see all those interviews if you want. And we'll be back on the air not a week from today because that is Thanksgiving, but a week from Sunday. So we'll get about 10 days off of a live show, but we'll be back at it. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the show. Appreciate you all taking the time. If you can watch us online all the time, at D3Hoopsville is your Twitter account, or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. We're also on Instagram at D3Hoopsville as well. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you back here in a week, but enjoy the basketball in between. Good night, everybody.